All right. Um, I'd like to call to order the Southborough School Committee open meeting for Monday, November 8th, 2021. Time is 6:32. First item on the agenda is audience sharing. See, we have a few folks in the audience, but don't see any hands. So give it another minute. Why don't I then move on to new business? And Mr. Martin, I'll hand it over to you. I see we've got an update from the principals.
Sure. So we'll start with a couple updates from principals. And why don't we start with Principal Ryan?
Sure. Well, things at the Finn School are going well. Roger had mentioned about the warm weather, but believe it or not, we still have purple peppers on some of our pepper plants and tomatoes in our garden from the summer planting that we had. So, you know, the warm weather has helped us with having recess, having snack outside, and our students spending more time outside than they typically would during November. I'm sorry, it's November. Yeah, still a month off. And we have made the adjustments to our cafeteria, now opening up the second space in the back of the gym so we can accommodate students at a 6-foot distance at lunch. Really being mindful of our masks, our mask mandates, and our protocols for safety throughout the building. We are reminding each other, students are reminding each other about masks on at all times, outside of snack or lunch. And we are looking forward to this week and parent-teacher conferences coming up. In terms of some PD, this morning we had a staff meeting. It was facilitated by myself and Jen O'Connor Lipton, and we went over some of the CASEL frameworks and basically some of the themes that we're looking at related to our school improvement plan. So we're in a pretty good groove at the Finn School, and we're just plugging along.
All right, Principal Mucci.
Thank you, Greg. So like Clayton had mentioned, we transitioned our gym space into cafeteria seating to provide for a greater amount of distance. We also changed some of our dismissal procedures based on that change in the cafeteria. We also had a staff meeting earlier today, where Jennifer Lipton O'Connor came and talked about some of the SEL work related to our school improvement plan goal, as well as the CASEL framework. So there's definitely a lot of alignment between schools at this stage after sharing our school improvement plans last month. Last week, we had Professional Development Day on November 1st, and there we talked about some of the DLCS standards and what that work will look like moving forward for Woodward teachers and specialists. Going back to, talk about COVID. So we are preparing our school for a vaccination clinic this Wednesday. It's very exciting news for parents and families of students aged 5 to 11. Been working closely with Southborough Police and Fire, as well as Department of Public Health, facilities, Assistant Superintendent Lavoie, and operations, just making sure that the procedure or the process will run smoothly. We've had a few site visits and are feeling confident that that it'll go off without a hitch. And of course, this is bringing peace of mind to a lot of community members, faculty, and staff. The other thing I just wanted to mention was just a highlight from some of the work one of our students at the Woodward School has been doing over the course of the past several months. Really over the past year. Greg, if you don't mind, I'm just going to read a quick excerpt from one of my last newsletters. So this is about Simona Pete. She is currently a 3rd grade student, and Simona, one of our 3rd grade students, has been on a mission to help get the blue-spotted salamander recognized as a state amphibian. At the end of the 2020-2021 school year, Simona learned that Massachusetts does not currently have a state amphibian. This surprised Simona, but then motivated her to take action and get the blue spotted salamander, which is a threatened species, recognized as a state amphibian. When I sat with Simona, she explained that the importance of vernal pools really comes down to making sure that the vernal pools are safe and thriving, so that way all amphibians and all animals can benefit from that, sanctuary and habitat. This is the exciting news that currently there's a bill on the committee. There's a bill in committee on the State House of Representative floor, and one in the Senate that is going to be introduced this week to make the blue spotted salamander the state amphibian. So Simona has been teaming up with other organizations around the state to kind of get this work done. And we had quite a few students at Woodward create posters, write letters, and share that with state representatives. So we're really proud of the action that our students are taking at Woodward.
Great.
All right, thank you, Steve, and Principal Valente.
Thank you. As Clayton and Steve mentioned, we'll be partnering with Jennifer Lipton O'Connor to learn more about the castle and its framework in an upcoming staff meeting. And we're working on our whole book study as a school on We've Got This by Cornelius Minor. And both of these are connected to our school improvement plan and its goals. Movie theaters are back at Neary in response to our 6 feet distance within the dining room. We have 2 dining rooms now. We have our dining gym and our dining room, and it was well received by our students. Conferences have already begun. They're not scheduled technically for 2 more weeks, but teachers have already begun meeting with parents via Zoom and in person. And this weekend, Jennifer Churio made an enormous donation of candy to Rise Above out of Worcester, and some of our candy will also be sent to the troops. So this was really a community effort. I mean, not only did we have Neary students donating, but we had former students, parents donating, community members. So it was wonderful. We were able to drop some artwork off at the Southborough Senior Center, and tomorrow we'll be delivering some messages to the veterans at the Senior Center. So we're looking forward to sharing that. We also had our first school council meeting 2 weeks ago, diving deep into our new school improvement plan with them. Our fun run by the SOS is coming up next week, and thanks to Trotter Middle School, they're letting us use their track. So we're looking forward to taking a little field trip up there with both our 4th and 5th graders. And our 5th graders are also busy preparing for the annual C course. We didn't get to have it last year, so we're looking forward to bringing that back. And later on this evening, I'm looking forward to sharing about our world language program.
Thank you, Principal Valente, and lastly, Principal Harshak.
So some familiar themes here. We also had to adjust our cafeteria. We moved roughly half of our students into the band room starting today. Students made a nice adjustment. The nice weather is actually helping us tremendously. We're getting students outside as much as possible. Mr. Clark has been able to commandeer the auditorium for all his ensembles, and Mrs. Elzapidi has not interfered with her choral groups as well. We are rebooting the Metro West Health Survey that was supposed to take place on Friday. There were some technical difficulties, but that will take shape moving forward. We're working with the foundation to move forward with that. Like Mrs. Valente mentioned, we also met with our school council, and the first time in, I believe, in Trotter history, we had an election for school council. We had 10 people interested in running for the school council, which really underscores the investment in education and the commitment in education. So no controversies in our elections, no hanging chads or anything like that. So we did get to welcome two new members, and we did start looking at our school improvement plan as well. If anyone's driving around campus, and if you go into the side of the cafeteria, this nice weather is affording our new class called Simple Structure or Small Structures, which is an 8th grade elective, which is actually taught by Spanish teacher, Mr. Drake. and students are using the engineering design principles in a real life scenario. They are building a shed for our gardening program. So Mr. Drake has about 10 students. Mr. Ryan, I could see that you're very interested in this shed construction project. So he has about 10 eighth grade students, and they're building a shed for our gardening program. And hopefully we'll get the framework done before the cold weather. This this class was funded through an SCF grant 2 years ago, but because of COVID, we had to suspend this work, and now it's begun, and so we're very proud of that. In addition to that, we toured the building with the Southborough Fire Department. We're looking to bring in the Southborough Fire Department to work with our eighth graders in our CPR course. They want to kind of show, the standard CPR training in conjunction with the fire department's training, and hopefully bring some of the paramedics and the ambulance for our students as well. Collectively, our students have adjusted well to all the adherence to our safety, health and safety protocols, and and they also adjusted well with the shift in our cafeteria seating.
And I believe that concludes the principal's report, Mr. Challen.
Any committee members? I see Kamali has her hand up. Kamali?
Yes, I just wanted to commend everyone for making changes so quickly in regards to the facilities and the cafeteria, and all the conversations with the students. I've heard some good feedback about that, and the facilities team, the janitorial services, I just take my hat off to them to being able to make that change so quickly. And I think that that's for the benefit of our students and our teachers. Whatever they were observing, I think that those conversations were had and you made those changes. So, congratulations there. Also, who was it? Principal Mucci, right? In third grade, the young student that is helping us to get a state amphibian. I just think that's such a great example of leadership. And I hope that I've seen the updates in the newsletter, but I think that's something that she can share with the rest of the our 10 schools, not just her own classroom and not just Woodward.
I think that's a great idea. And this was totally from her. This was something that she was passionate about and approached her teachers and myself last year with the idea and was kind of keeping us in the loop as far as the process goes, but then joined up with, I believe it was the Vernal Pools Association of Massachusetts. And there's a large group of high school students who are also kind of taking this on. And so she's been working in tandem with other groups around the state. So it's just so inspiring to see, a third grader kind of working for a change like this.
Mm-hmm.
So I will be happy to share more updates. She told me, I think it was Friday at lunchtime, that the bill was going to be heard on the state floor this week. But then she said the process can then take months after that. So I will certainly keep you posted as best I can.
And that's awesome. I have vivid memories of our teachers rolling in the TV when we were watching some sort of legislative process or someone being sworn in or the rockets being launched. Like, this would be a great thing to have the TVs roll in for. So, or if it happened to be during lunch, they could this would be the movie that they're watching.
I've connected with her classroom teacher, Ms. Robeson, as well as Simona's mom. And I'm sure I could get more information and get some feedback from the actual event, and if possible, record it or even share a video of that. So I will look into that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Katura, did your hand go up and down? What happened?
I didn't have my hand up.
Oh, all right. Well, never mind then. Anyone else? I'm sorry. Anyone else? Just a couple comments, 3 actually. Now, I do want to let folks know I'm going to be very careful out in my yard that I don't disturb any small amphibians, okay? After this evening's presentation, I want to be responsible for that. I'd also like to thank everyone, repeat the thanks that Kamali already offered as far as the quick action on reconfiguring things physically related to spacing, et cetera. That's a larger task than I think any of us realize. So very impressive. Thank you. I think that might be, oh, one other thing. So Gary, I'm curious. So when did, what was the time period that the students had to, I guess, put in their nomination papers or, for the student council?
This was the our Trotter school council. So this was opened up to the parents in the community. So
okay, so how did they come? So how do they come in?
so I had on a yearly basis, we have to look at the vacated seats. This year we had 2 seats. I communicated that out to the community through a one call now, informing the community of two open seats. And typically, sometimes there's cajoling to get folks to serve on the school council. And when I sent it out, I was shocked that I had 10 people interested in 2 positions. I worked with Dr. Reinhardt to say, how do we do this? Because we haven't done this. She gave me some guidance. SOS helped oversee the election, and we sent out a Google form via one call, and folks voted for the 2 vacancies.
So it's a parent council, and the elections are over at this point in time, or
That's correct. Yes.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else? All right. I guess we're going to move to school improvement plans, Craig.
Last month, our elementary principals shared their school improvement plan with the community and the committee. And as I had mentioned, they implemented the new 3-year school improvement plan, and they spent most of last year preparing for their new plan. And Principal Hershuk and Assistant Principal Mahoney have also been engaged in the school improvement planning process last year. And we are very excited for the 2 to present Trottier's updated school improvement plan. So I will turn it over to Principal Hershuk and Assistant Principal Mahoney.
Thank you, Greg. Just going to share my screen. So Greg, thank you. And Southborough School Committee, thank you as well for this opportunity to talk about the Trottier School Improvement Plan 2021 to 2024. In this presentation, you'll probably hear some similar themes that you heard from my elementary colleagues last month in terms of our plan, our process, and the work going forward. Clearly, there's a district alignment with our process, duration, and the content. Our plan, like the elementary plans, is a 3-year plan as opposed to the 2-year plans that we've had in the past. In addition, there are yearly action steps within our plan when you have an opportunity to take a look at it. These yearly action steps will help ensure, a level of accountability and attainability with some of our work. Lastly, it's very clear that our plan has more of a data-driven improvement planning process, which Mrs. Mahoney is going to speak on with the portrait of the graduate.
Okay, thank you. So what you see here is the portrait of a graduate work that NASA has been doing for about 2 or so years, and it's detailed in our strategic plan, Vision 2026. And so this is a vision that continues to shape our work as leaders and educators, given that our school improvement plan was created based on the district's strategic objectives and initiatives. It's important to call attention to these values and attributes of the portrait of a graduate. So we're working together to help students become collaborators, critical and creative thinkers, communicators, socially and civically engaged, growth-oriented, and healthy and balanced. These goals and action steps in our school improvement plan are intended to help guide our work and our shared vision of the portrait of a graduate. So I'm going to pass it back to Principal Hershuk to talk about our planning process.
I know you all have the good fortune to look through our school improvement plans. I do really want to impart upon you that the planning process was unlike any planning process that I had worked on in any school improvement plan in the past. In the years past, we had historically kind of worked in silos, 10 schools doing 10 different plans, but it really was the Vision 2026 and the work of Greg, Stephanie, Keith, Marie, Rhoda, and Julie that provided the district vision in which we anchored all our work under. So once the vision was created, we had Mrs. Mahoney and I had a great opportunity to work with our elementary school principals to help shape some of our plans. In addition, in the first time in all my years in working on the school improvement plan, I had the good fortune to work with my colleagues from Milliken Middle School and Algonquin Regional High School as we shaped our school improvement plan. Having the secondary schools work together is a key, step in this, district vision. Once we kind of had the big buckets or the big goals, we were able to bring these goals back to our Trotter faculty for review. The Trotter faculty was critical in providing action steps that were meaningful and made sense to the Trotter school structure, culture, and curriculum. In addition, our school council had, reviewed this work as well, asked questions, clarified, and streamlined some of this work. So, collectively, there were many stakeholders that were involved in this. There were many voices that were involved in this. And it was really, a compelling and enthralling process to work through in developing our school improvement plan. Ms. Mahoney.
Yep, excellent. So our first two goals are around the district's strategic objective, which is empowering learners. And the first goal is around high quality instruction, and that's to create a learning environment that provides high quality instruction to all learners. And to carry out this goal, we're working together to define what high quality instruction looks like. So when we go into classes, what should we be seeing from teachers? What should we see students do? What the learning environment looks like.
The second goal is to increase the integration of the digital literacy and computer science standards, power standards, into the existing curriculum. Now we're going to talk about some of the action steps in order to meet these goals.
Okay, so for the first goal around high quality instruction, Principal Harshik and I are going to continue to conduct co-observations. And this is a practice where Principal Harshik and I observe faculty members. We take notes on the observation and then discuss and analyze our observations afterwards. So what it does, it allows us to calibrate our expectations for teaching and learning and what we'd like to see our learning environment look like. Another step that we are going to take is we are going to pilot in the 2022-2023 school year, and that's a peer coaching system where members of our staff observe peers using various instructional practices that will enhance their work. We do have some faculty members this year who have adopted a SMART goal that Principal Harshik and I created around this work. And so what we plan to do is gather some feedback from the faculty members that are engaging in some of this work this year, so we can plan for a smooth pilot for next year. And then just the last action step around this is we're going to continue to emphasize the importance of providing that rigorous experience for all of our students or learners by exposing our students to high quality instruction while providing various accommodations through the district curriculum accommodation plans as needed. Our faculty is continuously working on how we can provide support for all of our learners.
So for our action steps for the second goal, we are going to increase the integration of the digital literacy and computer science power standards into the existing curriculum. Really what we're trying to do is leverage the technology proficiency levels that our teachers have gained as a result of the pandemic. Arguably, our teachers' skill, knowledge, and efficiency advanced in a year and a half that would have typically taken about 5 years as a result of the pandemic. One of the key first steps in this process is to inventory the digital literacy and computer science curriculum standards by coordinating with our educators to identify which of the power standards are already being addressed through the existing curriculum and instruction. For example, if you were to peel back the digital literacy standards and look at the digital tools and collaboration strand, one of the standards cited would be to communicate and publish key ideas and details individually or collaboratively in a way that informs, persuades, or entertains using a variety of digital tools and media-rich resources. This standard is hit multiple times, multiple grades in multiple disciplines, and so this is probably one of those ones that we know is going to be, there's probably going to be more application of this standard throughout the 3-year journey of our middle schoolers. We want our teachers to examine and discuss these practices. Not only is this inventory work really about seeing what curriculum standards are being met, it really is a way to propel conversations around teaching and learning. I think what our teachers will find once we embark upon the inventory is that many of these standards are probably being delivered throughout the classroom experience. They just have not identified these standards, as associated through this curriculum. Once we do this first round of inventory, we're going to look at redundancies of where these standards are going to be hit. And we're also going to look at voids and where some of the standards may not be being touched upon with frequency throughout the 3 years. Once we do that, at the conclusion of this year, the goal is then to start making some shifts to our curriculum and our practices to ensure that all the digital literacy and computer science standards will be hit in the next 2 or 3 years. I have the good fortune to talk about the third goal. And again, this goal is something that's familiar to the school committee, as it was shared by our elementary colleagues as well. And so our third goal is to foster culturally responsive and inclusive classroom communities in school environments that provide equal access to learning for all students. As part of this work, we want to develop a shared understanding of culturally responsive teaching and inclusive practices. And we also want to define expectations for the implementation of culturally responsive teaching, pedagogy, and methodologies. One of the biggest themes that you've heard throughout the course of the year is the theme of windows and mirrors. And this has propelled much of our culturally responsive work to date. This has been a tool to help us uncover unconscious bias and make our schools more diverse and culturally responsive. For example, last year, during one of our professional development opportunities, we tasked our teachers to look at what does a culturally responsive teaching look like in your discipline and in your subject area. Teachers could decide to work on 3 different tasks. They had the opportunity to evaluate and discuss what culturally responsive teaching looks like in, say, the math classroom or the science classroom or the ELA classroom. Those would all look and feel very differently. Teachers could also conduct an inventory, a curriculum unit audit in which they could brainstorm ways in order to bring, the themes of windows and mirrors into a particular unit of study. Lastly, teachers had the opportunity to also do a library audit. This could be a classroom library audit to make sure that the materials that students can choose are culturally responsive. We had actually many teachers work with Mrs. Allenson to actually examine our collection in the Trotter Library as the audit process had taken shape. This theme of windows and mirrors continued throughout our summer reading. If you're not familiar with our summer reading program, we allow students to choose from about 30 different selections of various genres. And on the first day of school, those students who chose the book work with 1 or 2 teachers to have a discussion around the book. Mrs. Allenson highlighted the use of windows and mirrors and highlighted the importance of summer reading for promoting personal growth and for expanding our understanding of the world beyond ourselves. Some of the selections included a book called Dear Martin, which highlighted the main character, Justice McAllister, who struggled to face the reality of race relations in his world and how it impacted him growing up. Another selection was called The Night Diary, which told the story of the main character, 12-year-old Nisha, who was Hindu, who talked about, what it was like during living in 1947 when the India and Pakistan partition had taken place. In addition, this theme of windows and mirrors really became kind of the driver of our community building work during our first 2-day experience. I'm going to turn it back to Mrs. Mahoney, who's going to share some of that about some of that work.
All right, excellent. So we did decide that that was going to be the driver for some of our community-based work. So to continue on that theme of using windows and mirrors, we decided to focus our first 2-day activity on windows and mirrors, helping students understand what it really means in terms of a mirror experience and a window experience. So we introduced this concept by reading the children's story, The Ugly Vegetable by Grace Lin. And what the story does is it highlights the importance of seeing ourselves in our world, in our curriculum in school, and in our community, as well as also learning about our peers through their mirror experiences. So our staff actually, in order to provide some of those connections, our staff made a recording of their own mirrors so our students could meet our staff and see some of the interesting mirrors and the way our staff see themselves.
When I look at myself, I see a pretty cool dude.
When I look at myself, I see a mother, a wife, daughter, teacher, a friend, someone who loves nature, someone who likes to be active and loves animals, somebody who loves fishes. Say hi, Scooby.
When I see myself, I see a team player.
Here we go.
I am a daughter.
I am a father.
Say, I'm brave. I'm smart. I'm intelligent. I can do anything. I love myself.
I see brown hair, blue eyes, freckles. Public service announcement to use your sunscreen when you're younger. I see a teacher, a mother, a daughter, a sister, a wife, an aunt, a cousin. I see someone who loves to learn and who loves to come to school every day.
Hey, Trout here, Mr. Hirschek here. When I look at myself, I see a family man, an educator, someone who tells incredibly bad jokes, and a dog lover. Isn't that right, Scout? Thank you.
When I look at myself, I see a woman that has blondish hair. I see someone that has hazel eyes and someone that likes to sit in the sun during the good weather, during the summertime. I am also a mother. I am a wife. I am a daughter. And I am someone that loves to be passionate about education and the people around me. And that's what I see when I look at myself in the mirror.
When I look at myself, I see a woman, brown eyes, reddish hair, not my natural hair color. I see a mother, a learner, a leader. I see actually my mother because I look just like her. And I see somebody who likes to smile.
I'll pause there. Ms. Mahoney, you want to continue?
Well, I think that was it. So we basically just used that as a hook for our students to understand the concept of mirrors, and then ultimately windows by seeing other and understanding other people's experiences through how they see themselves.
Thank you, Ms. Mahoney. Another action step is Trout is launching the World of Difference program. This program is coordinated with the Anti-Defamation League, and it is giving our students an opportunity for leadership, for some leadership opportunities. It is a proactive response, and we're putting this in place to help students recognize and respond to bias in themselves and others. The program will also support students who are targeted with bias and ideally promote respect for racial and cultural differences. To date, we've had 30 students apply for the program. They had to complete an application and they had to be interviewed by our advisors, Mrs. Jenks and Mrs. Lunder. So just the fact that our 7th and 8th grade students are stepping out of their comfort zones to take this step to apply for these leadership opportunities has been very impressive. We will have roughly about 20 to 25 peer leaders take on this work. They will receive 18 hours of additional training from the Anti-Defamation League. They will also meet with our advisors on a biweekly basis. And it is the goal for our 7th and 8th grade peer leaders to run, a series of conversations, activities, and many in classroom meetings around the issues of bias and cultural differences starting second semester. So we're very excited about this. This is a new program, and it really has the opportunity to really kind of propel some of this work around our culturally responsive teaching and learning. In addition, last Monday, November 1st, we had the good fortune to have the Anti-Defamation League work with our staff to examine implicit and unconscious bias, including microaggressions, and its impact on staff, students, and colleagues. We also identified personal and institutional strategies that will facilitate a more inclusive and equitable practices in educating a diverse student population. For one of the discussion questions that the ADL presented to our staff is, what ism permeates your school? And what they meant by ism is ableism, anti-Semitism, ageism, weightism, classism, sexism, heterosexism. And they sent us out into virtual discussion rooms, and the conversations were very intriguing and enthralling. And it was interesting based on the makeup of different faculty members in these different discussion groups. Some groups really identified one ism over the other. So now it's Mrs. Mahoney's job to really start connecting these dots about what isms do we feel is permeating Trotter. To support this work, the district is also doing an equity audit, and this is timely because tomorrow our students will partake in a student survey that will take roughly about 20 minutes. And the survey is voluntary and it's anonymous. But the questions on this audit ask students about how do they feel at school? Do they feel safe at school? They ask students if they see their culture within our school-wide celebrations, or whether they see their culture in the curriculum or within the text in which they read. The questions will also focus on academic rigor and support, fairness in policies and practices, and issues of discrimination. I'm proud to highlight also our expansion of the GSA, our Gender and Sexuality Alliance. Our GSA not only meets after school, but it also meets at grade level lunches. So members of the LGBTQ+ community and its allies have opportunities to get together and to talk about issues which are important to them. One of the goals for this year is to either invite members of the Algonquin GSA or even to work with our 8th grade GSA to present to our faculty to talk about their experience at the middle school level. Having that student voice will be so critical. Ms. Mahoney and I have just kind of highlighted some of the big things that are taking place at Trotter, but I think one of the things we've realized, it's also the small things that matter. It's those small ongoing recognitions of student culture and and cultural traditions, which is so critical. For example, the other day, we had 4 students in the office who just kindly asked to make a brief announcement about Diwali. They just shared the history of Diwali, what it means to them, and why it's important. In September this year, our ELD teacher, Megan Wickstead, invited her families from the ELD program for an ice cream social on a beautiful September night to kick off the year. Getting these families from diverse backgrounds together was such a wonderful event. I think about 20 to 25 people showed up. And if you're ever planning an event with 20 to 25 people, 9 gallons of ice cream is way too much. So just some of our work going forward is that we continue to do the small things with celebration of cultural traditions throughout the course of the year. I think those small recognitions mean so much to our students. I'm going to hand it back off to Mrs. Mahoney, who's going to talk about our last goal.
All right, excellent. So this is our fourth and final goal of our school improvement plan, and it's based on the strategic objective of healthy and balanced learners. The goal is around social emotional learning, and it's to develop and implement a systematic approach to incorporating social emotional learning across our school. We do plan to develop a shared understanding and culture that creates awareness and commitment and ownership of the social, emotional, and physical well-being of our students. We recognize that at the core of this work are the 5 CASEL competencies. Those are social awareness, self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, and relationship skills. We know that implementing these competencies with fidelity will allow all of our members of the Trotter community to feel safe and feel confident in taking academic risks. And it also directly relates to the equity of opportunity initiative as creating an environment that's grounded in social emotional learning practices. It fosters an inclusive community where all members feel they belong and they all equally have access to support in the learning. So in terms of the action steps, thank you. What we've done is we've expanded our counseling department this year, and that's to include the addition of a second school adjustment counselor, as well as a therapeutic classroom, or as we call it at Trotter, our counseling classroom. The classroom is a place where identified students can learn and practice healthy and adaptive coping skills that allow them to access their daily schedule. We do have our school adjustment counselors create a monthly newsletter, which they call Celebration, like SEL, Celebration, and that really highlights some of the aspects of social emotional learning. Some include coping skills and self-care, how we manage, certain situations and navigate situations on a daily basis. Some of the other action steps are about continuing to learn and emphasize the importance of restorative practices throughout the entire school. So meaning that there's really a focus on relationship building and then repairing those relationships when they're broken. We also are going to continue our strong partnerships with our community-based organizations such as Southborough Youth and Family Services. And we're really excited this year that SYFS has brought back the Youth Council for Trotter students. So that's extremely exciting. And then lastly, as the elementary principals had shared, we also plan to partner with Dr. Lipton O'Connor on our work together to create that consistency for social emotional learning throughout all 10 schools. I think that's pretty much it.
Is that the end of the improvement plans?
That's it.
Well, let's just, I see Kamali's got her hand up.
Yes. I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm ready to go to that school. That sounds amazing. So thank you for the presentation. You ended on a note, Ms. Mahoney, where you were talking about some partnerships. And one open question I had is, so many of the students are engaged with activities or wraparound kind of services from Southborough Recreation. So lots of the sports activities or chess or something of that nature. And I wonder if there's an opportunity to share some of the learnings or the training sessions or the documentation that you guys are receiving around with the leadership there, one, but also many of the coaches, right? Because they have so much of a kind of student-teacher relationship with the students as well. I mean, that's not, so that's my question. I know it's not really like they're not in school, but from the sense of partnership, and they're serving our students, I wonder if there's an opportunity there.
Yeah, there certainly is. I think you're spot on, because what it is all about creating those partnerships, but also anybody who is working with our students, giving them the skills, because those are the students that really are the people that are on the front lines, identifying student needs, their emotional well-being. And so we are partnering with SYFS. They have a couple ideas about some trainings regarding mental health and social emotional well-being. And so I think, offering those trainings to parents and the community. So I think that encompasses Southborough Rec, but that's something that I think will kind of come as the year progresses in our work with SYFS.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, and a lot of this is very new, I know. So it's just something kind of to keep in mind. I'll keep putting a bug in Stephanie's ear from the coalition standpoint, but I definitely think that there's a opportunity there that we can make sure that our, those coaches and those leaders are not, propagating the microaggressions, the misuse of terms. The students that are part of the GSA might have something that they could educate them on, et cetera. So, all right, thank you.
Jennifer?
Yeah, I just had I'm not sure if it was a question or a comment, but, I like this idea of the mirrors and the, culturally responsiveness in terms of like curriculum and all these other elements. I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit to, because one thing I was struck when watching the video of the staff is that if you can speak a little bit to the diversity, whether it's cultural, racial diversity of the actual teachers and staff who are in the school buildings, and what it's like really, if we're talking about mirrors too, for children then to see a video where it's relatively heterogeneous, and how do you deal with having them be able to express and see themselves in those things? You did talk about books and other things, which I think is great.
Yeah, Jennifer, I don't think Trotter is much different than any school across the Commonwealth. I mean, I think there is if you look across the ranks of education, there's a diversity gap that takes place. However, I think our teachers do share their, a richness in terms of identity, religion, and those things do come out. I understand, and I think you're going to see, the ethnicity that came out, but that is, celebrated with our students as a whole. And just because we do not have a diverse teaching staff does not mean we do not explore the themes of diversity. And I understand that sometimes who the messenger is may have an impact, but I also think that it's important that when our staff shows that it's important to us, and it's important to hear the stories of our students and hear the stories of their families. I think students appreciate that. But you're right, in terms of our teaching staff, we're not diverse, and we're not alone in this as well. So.
Right. And I realize that's not just common to us, but I was just, I was curious about that too, from the perspective of the mirrors piece and what we're talking about. Thank you.
It is a goal of ours to recruit more diverse educators to our organization. Heather Richards just wrote a grant to be part of a statewide initiative around really studying and setting courses of action around how we can recruit a more diverse workforce. So it is something that we pay attention to and are committed to in terms of our hiring practices.
Thank you.
Kim?
I just have a quick question about, Gary, you said that I think tomorrow the students are going to have access to the survey around the work for the equity audit, and that it's voluntary. And I'm wondering how it's being done. Is it done in the classroom or?
Sure, it's going to be, we just suggested our schedule. I think we shaved off about 3 minutes from each class. We'll have students go to a first period class. It will be disseminated through our Canvas page. I did message this out. It is voluntary. They can go to the Canvas page and take it or not take it. I think that it said that the survey would take 10 minutes. We allotted 20 minutes just in case for extra time. In addition, it's anonymous, and they will also at the end, Stephanie, correct me if I'm wrong, students can also register to be part of a focus group next week. So again, if any student does not want to take it, that they can just read it, they can have the opportunity to read during that time. I think we were worried that if I just sent it out and we just had kids take it on their own, we may not get the critical input. So we're just kind of carving out the 20 minutes at the beginning of the school day tomorrow.
That you're correct, Gary, about the focus groups. And I just want to point out that if they want to sign up for a focus group, it sends them to a separate sign up so that the survey remains anonymous, even though they are then signing up for a focus group.
Awesome. Great, thank you.
Katura?
Thank you. That was a wonderful presentation. I just want to recognize, and I don't know if this maybe goes without saying, or, I think it's something that we get so used to here in this district where there's so much wonderful emphasis put on the whole student and the social emotional side of things and the mental health side of things and just sort of the development of the whole student. But I was just struck by how much of that was covered in your presentation. And it's important every year, but middle school is a special time. It's sort of this big transitional time. And I think if there's one thing that we've learned, and we've learned many things over the last year and a half or so, but mental health is very important, and you can't learn if you're not in a good place. And so I just think it's just wonderful, the emphasis that that you put on that. And I thought the presentation was excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Gary, I'd just like to also say that I'm very impressed with the work you're doing around this equity of opportunity. It is very impressive. I was almost ready to join Kamali and applying for school until you said you were cutting the ice cream off at 9 gallons. So I've rethought that. But Kim, is your hand still up, Kim, or it just not down? Okay. So I'll turn this back to Superintendent Martineau.
Yeah, I just would like to, before I move on to the next agenda item, I just would like to thank Principal Hershuk and Assistant Principal Mahoney for their leadership. And also I'd like to recognize that the creation of a school improvement plan is a collaborative process. So reflective in the presentation this evening are many ideas of Trotter teachers and the school council. So I think it's really important to recognize the thinking that went behind all of the planning over the past year. And just want to thank Gary and Stacy for their leadership.
You're here to that.
Thank you.
All right.
Moving to world language.
Yes, so an exciting update on the world language front. Several years ago, the district undertook a world language study group, which was led by Principal Valente, and we had key stakeholders across our 10 schools really study world language, in particular around the elementary level, to see what opportunities we could create for our students in Southborough around world language. And through last year's budget process, it was a budget priority, and we were able to move one of the recommendations of the study group forward. And this evening, Principal Valente is going to share some of the early successes that we've seen thus far.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. If you could allow me to share my screen.
Committee members, I think you also have this in your packets.
Can you see that?
We can.
All right, thank you. Just loading. All right. So thanks to, as Superintendent Martineau just recognized, the collaborative efforts of the 2018 World Language Study Committee, the Southborough School Committee, the Central Office Administration, and the commitment to bring the best candidate to our school by the NARI staff, I'm able to share with you tonight about our new world language program at NERI. So we thought this quote was appropriate. Learning another language is not only learning different words for the same things, but learning another way to think about things, by Flora Lewis. So, hold on 1 minute. I don't know why it's not letting, okay. I apologize. So our world language teacher is, after extensive search and interview process, we hired our new world language teacher, Esther Valverde Calardo from Madrid, Spain. This hiring process was made possible through a partnership with the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and the Education Department of the Consulate of Spain. So working closely with the education advisor, Manuel Collarzo Fernandez, Esther was able to join us in August, just in time for our new teacher training. I also need to commend Heather Richards, as she was a great supporter of this process, because she was part of the team that actually went over to Madrid, Spain, to interview the educators who were interested in becoming part of this program. So thanks to Heather. So our program is identified as a FLEX program, which is Foreign Language Exploratory Program, and it aims to provide a foundation for language study. Students at NERI receive instruction 2 times per week, 45 minutes for each lesson. And Ms. Valverde teaches in each of the 14 classrooms. She actually goes into each classroom. She's on a cart, and teachers have provided her with a space within each classroom to have a world language program corner and to be able to celebrate students' work and put up content-related materials. I apologize for this. Oh. My computer is acting very funny today. If you just give me 1 minute to try to fix this. All right. So this program helps our students to understand that thoughts can be expressed in other languages and to develop their global citizenship. They're exploring other cultures and countries, learning about music, traditions, languages, and lifestyles. And Ms. Valverde Collado is also collaborating with our specialists to connect learning between the various disciplines. So she's been working closely with Mrs. Johnson, our art teacher, talking about artists that can be highlighted that students can research about, while also creating portraits and paintings within the classroom setting in art. They're talking about doing a clay project together. She's also talking with our music teacher, learning about different songs that she can bring into her classroom, as well as be practiced within the music classroom. So this is really building a solid foundation and a launching point for our students as they transition to the foreign language programs at Trotter. So I'm going to share 4 different areas: what we're writing about, what our students are reading about, what they're speaking about, and what they are listening to. So the first one is, what are our students writing about within their world language classroom? So to begin with, in recognition of Hispanic Heritage Month, each student was assigned a Spanish-speaking country to research. They learned about the location of their country, the culture, the food, the currency, and the traditions. And their work was shared with their peers and then added to their passports. And you can see the passport right here. It's a collection of all of their work together, and this is in their World Language Corner. So they work together in partners, they present it to their peers, and they'll continue to research other countries as they move through the program. And what are they reading about? They are focused on, right now they're working on reading about great women who have changed the world and had global impact on society. They're reading about Miss Valverde Colado is moving towards thinking about Black History Month coming in after the winter break, and what heroes they can learn about across our world that had, again, an impact on our society. They've been researching artists such as Frida Kahlo. They learned about Associate Justice of Supreme Court Sonia Sotomayor, and they also learned about the astronaut and former director of the Johnson Space Center, Eleanor Ochoa. So that's what they've been learning about and reading about. And speaking, they're learning greetings and farewells in Spanish. They're also learning common words and phrases, and such as days of the week, months of the years, classroom supplies. If you go into the classroom, you'll see words are labeled. They've played various matching games with words in English and words in Spanish and words in French. And teachers are partnering with the world language and classroom teachers in 4th grade to play a bingo game in the next few weeks using numbers in Spanish. So they're looking forward to that partnership. And then listening to some of the classrooms are using Duolingo during their class to listen to mini stories, learn words and phrases, and this is complementing the curriculum that Ms. Valverde Collado is building. And then finally, I wanted to mention that although our program is in its infancy and we're building the plane while flying it, I'm proud of the work that she's doing, and I'm excited about how our students are responding to the instruction and the passion and dedication in giving them this world language experience. It's been a true collaborative effort, and we're looking forward to hearing from Trotter as our students transition from 5th to 6th grade about the foundation that they're building. So any questions or comments?
Any questions from the committee? Kamali?
Hi, Kathleen. Do the students have access to those listening apps that you mentioned afterwards?
They do not.
Sorry.
Are you talking about Duolingo?
Yeah.
They do not yet. We're just in the beginning of stages of exploring that. We're using the free app right now, but that could be something to consider in the future.
Okay.
Kim?
Kathleen, I feel like I asked a question, whatever that meeting was, and I feel like I caused all of this work, but I'm so happy to hear about it.
No, it was
I think the question I had then was sort of, do you see it shifting? So you're sort of taking that general year into NERI. So do we see it shifting going forward into Trotter, that they can sort of like have that extra year, or is it like we'll have an additional year?
Well, that's a great question. That's more not a me question.
Okay, right.
But I can say for this year, because our 5th graders did not receive the instruction last year as 4th graders, 4th and 5th they're receiving the same lessons. But next year we will build a new part of the program for 5th graders, and they'll be separate for 4th and 5th. It's not about language acquisition so much as exposure to cultures and countries and people and traditions. And so that's I think that's important because it will complement Trottier's French and Spanish programs and give students that foundation that they didn't have before.
I think it's a great addition to the curriculum. One other question, the teacher that came over from Spain, does she stay? Like, is it like a program where she's here for a year or?
Right. So yes, this is her first time in the United States. She has left her entire life back in Spain. So it's quite an endeavor to embark on. And she will stay for the year. The way the program works is they encourage, if she's a fit, and this is something that Miriam wants to continue with, the program, the partnership with DESE and the Spanish consulate is to encourage the candidates or the educator to stay for 3 years. Ultimately, they can stay for 5 years. It's quite a lot of work in the first year to establish yourself here. So that's why putting that time and effort in really lends itself nicely to be able to stay the extra 2 or 3 years or even 5 years.
That's awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Katuro?
So thank you. No, I just wanted to say this is great that this is up and running. I know it's been a while in the making, so that's great. And I had the same questions about how long the instructor would be here and how that all works. So I think that's been answered, but congratulations in getting it up and running.
Thanks. I mean, it's a really wonderful program, and the director of education for the consulate is in close contact and visits. He came to NERI a couple of weeks ago just to help me to understand what the process is for her coming on board and what it is for professional as well as personal, how that process works. So it's a great learning experience for especially for our students, but for our staff. And it's just been a wonderful addition to NERI. And I just want to apologize again for my technical glitches for the presentation. It always happens to me when I'm presenting for school committee. But thank you for the well wishes on it. And if you want, come in and see one of our classes. It's quite impressive. And the students are just, they're loving it. They love when she comes into the classroom and they just want to share all of their learning. So far, so good.
Kathleen, no apology needed for technical glitches. I could describe some things that happened at town meeting last week, and it makes yours pale in comparison. Okay.
Thank you.
But it was really only things that happened to me. So I also would just like to echo that this just seems like a great addition to the curriculum, and congratulations, and just excited about hearing how it's going to work out.
Yeah, and to have someone who actually just speaks, she speaks Spanish, French, and English. Quite amazing. And it's a great opportunity for our whole NERI community.
Well, here. Anyone else in the committee? All right. So moving to COVID-19 update. If there's anything to say.
Yes. So unfortunately, we have a lot to share. One thing is clear, that the pandemic is still with us, and that we have to be adaptive and agile as we look at the data. Before I turn it over to Mary Ellen, I just want to compliment Mary Ellen and our nursing team for the amazing job that they do on a day-to-day basis. They're always up to the challenge and willing to adapt. And I would say that a majority of their time really is spent as school nurses, kind of responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. And we are, as I'm sure many families are as well, excited for the day where they can return to their normal job responsibilities of being school nurses. Since we last met, DESE has updated its face mask policy it had set a date of November 1st for districts to decide if they wanted to lift the mask mandate for those districts that were 80% or above vaccination rates. They've extended that date to January 15th, and which means that the mask mandate will be in place until that time, which is great news because again, our 5 to 11-year-olds are now eligible for vaccination. So we're hoping, through the next couple of months, our vaccination rates will increase, which is a very important mitigation layer as we move forward, educating students in our district. So at this point in time, I will turn it over to Mary Ellen to talk a little bit about the testing program, the vaccination, the dashboard, and what we've experienced over the past couple of weeks, and then also speak about the continued guidance of the medical advisory team.
All right, thanks for having me tonight again. First and foremost, I need to echo Greg and thank our nurses for going above and beyond each and every day this whole year. Their job has been exponentially more difficult this year than last year, believe it or not. So they just deserve every bit of praise we can give them. We're blessed to have 3 clinical resource nurses or per diem nurses that support our team too. We would never be able to do it without them. So we'll start on a high note. Vaccine clinics for our 5 to 11-year-olds. We had our first 2 clinics for Northborough and Southborough in Northborough on Friday and Saturday. We vaccinated 876 children. 637 of them were our Northborough and Southborough students. So that's about a third, almost a third of our population. And we have another 300 appointments on Wednesday in Southborough. So it's an exciting time. And that's just great news. We were celebrating all night. So on Friday and Saturday, taking pictures and whooping it up with the kids. So it was just a great day for all of us. And it's going to make everybody's job a little bit easier in the future. The testing program, we tested the capacity of our test and stay program in the past couple of weeks, and we came through with flying colors. We gotten support from the state, our support team, and it seemed like the test and stay site, with the support of the town, it's at Corderville Hall, and it just worked great there. So Greg, if I have permission to share my screen, we'll talk a little bit about what's gone on in the past couple of weeks.
You should be all set.
Okay, thank you. We'll see if mine works, Kathleen. Can everybody see this? So as you all know, since October 24th, we've had clusters of cases at Neary, and also a small cluster at Trotter also. We're going to just focus on the Neary ones right now. So I'm going to go through it day by day, what happened, and we can kind of get a whole picture of all of the cases that have taken place at Neary. We're just going to focus on the 5th grade right now because that is where the majority of our cases took place. So on Monday, October 25th, we were notified of case 1, who was symptomatic and positive on the 24th with no known exposure. So contact tracing was done. I know you'll hear a lot about what contact tracing is, and I'm just going to go over it a little bit about what actually happens when we have to contact trace. This is a time-consuming task that the nurses really need to, I'll see if I can zoom in here a little bit, sorry. So each time the school nurses are informed of a positive case, the following steps have to happen. First, we have to confirm the case with the Board of Health. So having home tests has been great to get a head start on things, but home tests are not recognized by the Department of Public Health as a positive case or a probable case. In order for an antigen test to be recognized by the Department of Public Health, it needs to be done by it needs to be medically proctored. So our BinaxNOW tests are recognized when we do them or when you have it done at a doctor's office or a clinic, but when you do it at home, it is not recognized. So the Board of Health does not find out about those. So the way that the Board of Health we have a state database that positive cases go into, and that's where the Board of Health gets those notified of positive cases or probable cases. So the Board of Health nurse contacts the positive case and the person is informed of the need to isolate at home for a minimum of 10 days or until symptoms have symptoms have resolved and they're fever free. Sometimes we're the school is the one to find out first, like if we're the ones doing the testing, so we would do that notification first and then the Board of Health would follow up with that. So close contacts are identified through interviews with the positive case, the parents or guardians. Any household members are automatically close contacts. So siblings of students or children of staff members are notified of the need to quarantine. We identify when the positive individual is last in school and determine if full cleaning of the building has happened since that time. We identify the onset of symptoms, if there were symptoms, or the date of the positive test result, and compare to the date that it will last in school to determine if in-school contact tracing is required based on a 2-day look-back period. So in some cases, the positive individual has not been in the building during that 2 days because you're 48 hours prior to your positive test or your symptom onset, you are considered infectious. And in those cases, in-school contact tracing process doesn't really need to be done. In other cases, the person has been at school and the process continues. So classroom spaces occupied by the individual and the staff who interact in those spaces are identified. Seating charts are reviewed. Staff are contacted to gather information about what the interactions in the classroom look like on those days in question. And below are some of the samples of the questions that are asked. Do we have your seating chart for your class during that time period? Who would you identify as being within 3 feet of the positive case for greater than 15 minutes, cumulatively over 24 hours? And who would you identify as being within 6 feet of the positive case for greater than 15 minutes, which is cumulative over 24 hours? Is everybody in the area wearing masks consistently? If mask breaks have taken place in the classroom, how long are they? Was snack eaten in the classroom? Were there any other adults in the classroom during this time? Did students work in small groups? Did they sit on the rug? What was the length of time? How were the students spaced? If there was indoor recess, who was playing together and for how long? Were there any unusual occurrences that required close intervention? What is the seating chart for lunch? How far apart are the seats horizontally, vertically, and diagonally? So this is done for every classroom, every specialist where the student has attended. So you can imagine that this is a time-consuming process. So as we know that the definition of a close contact is anybody who's been within 6 feet of an infected person for greater than 15 minutes or more, cumulative over 24 hours, while indoors, starting from 2 days before illness onset until the time or positive test, until the time the patient is isolated. So in school, there are some exemptions to this. And those exemptions are that if you are within 3 feet, you're considered a close contact. If both people are masked, if you're within 6 feet, if one of the two individuals is unmasked. There is no contact tracing on the bus. And if you have been, if you're vaccinated, you are not considered a close contact. And if you, and you don't need to quarantine or test. And if you have tested positive in the past 90 days, you're exempt from any quarantine or testing. So all the information that's gathered by the school nurses is reviewed with the public health nurses. If we have questions, if both of us don't really know what the answers are to it, we have the state epidemiologist we could call. So we have a whole team that reviews all of the information we find out, and to help determine who's a close contact and who isn't. All close contacts are contacted in person if at school, or by phone or email if they're at home, to discuss the need for quarantine and testing and to answer any questions they might have. So in-school contact tracing is only one part of the overall process. Individuals who test positive are also contacted by the local public health nurse to do outside of school contact tracing. So that's a whole other part. So the school nurses and myself, we do the in-school contact tracing, and then the Department of Public Health nurses do the out-of-school contact tracing. And then we work together to determine the dates for return to dates, how long the isolation is. And so then we send home we send home a one call to all close contacts, and now we have the test and stay. People have the option to choose the 3 options that they can choose if they're a close contact is a 10-day quarantine with no testing, a 7-day quarantine with PCR testing on day 5, or the test and stay program, which is that you test and you can come to school, but you still need to quarantine outside of school. So that's what contact tracing is. So when you see contact tracing in this presentation, know that that happened for every time that we had a positive case, for the ones that needed to be contact traced. So so we found out about case number 1, back to this, and we did the contact tracing, and we did the test and stay during the school day, since this wasn't at the site. So if we find out about things during the school day, the nurses take care of the testing part of this test and stay. 2 individuals tested positive in that. And we had 1 other student in this classroom that was not in school and was home and was symptomatic, waiting for a test result, a PCR result. So at this point in time, when we had the 2 positives that were close contacts, we decided to consider the whole class a close contact. We sent the letter home on the afternoon of 10/25. And then we go to 10/26. By the time we found these 2, it was the afternoon, so we did not test everybody. We identified everybody as close contacts, and they were going to start their testing on the 26th. So we had 1, 2, and 3 last. So case 4 in classroom A was not identified as a close contact, but was in the classroom, was asymptomatic, and tested after notification. So once the parents got the notification of the close contact, they went and took them for a PCR that evening, a rapid PCR that evening, and they were positive asymptomatically. Case 5 was not identified as a close contact, but again was part of the larger classroom, and was symptomatic. And those symptoms started on the 24th. So they were at home and they were awaiting their test results, and they came back on the 26th. So the entire, oh gosh, look at that, I did that to Kathleen. So the entire class was in test and stay and on the 26th, and there were no further positives from this. But on this day also, we had classroom B, a student who was sent home with symptoms on Monday, and sent for a PCR. We got the positive test results for that. So contact tracing was done. For that student, contact tracing was done for, so 1, 2, and 3, all had contact tracing done, and now we have B1. These students were not in school, so they didn't have it done. With classroom B, there were also 2 students at home who were symptomatic. We reviewed this data with the medical advisory team. This was on Tuesday afternoon. On Wednesday, at test and stay, we had 2 students of this, when we did the test and stay, we had 2 students test positive. Again, so this was the first day of test and stay for these 2 students, and they tested positive. So once again, we identified the whole class as close contacts. We sent that letter out on the 27th in the afternoon. All of those students were tested at school. So then we had classroom B, the students who were home, both were tested positive. And then on the same day, we had 1 4th grade case, which was a household contact, test positive. On Thursday the 28th, we had classroom B, the 6th case was at test and stay, and asymptomatically tested positive. This person was not identified as a contact, but was part of the classroom. So we did contact tracing for that. We contacted DESE at this point to request remote learning for classroom A and B for Friday. The students that were in school On Thursday, when we notified the parents, they had the option to come pick them up, but the students were all spaced at 6 feet for the remainder of the day, the ones that stayed in school. On Friday, we had no new cases. On Saturday, we had a lot of cases. So this is classroom A. We had our 6th case there. This was day 5 after their last exposure. And then classroom B, cases 7 and 8, also day 5 after their last exposure. Classroom, and then we had a person in classroom C, the first case in classroom C, which was day 5 after their last exposure. So contact tracing was done for all of those students. And then we also had the second case in classroom C, which was not a close contact of anybody. It may have had exposure outside of school. There was some outside activities that a couple of students tested positive that were at the same activities. And classroom D had the first case, not a close contact, and was symptomatic. And classroom E also had the first case, which is not a close contact and symptomatic. On Sunday, the 31st, there were no new cases. We convened the medical advisory team to review all the data. The plan was to provide for an extra pool testing for all of 5th grade on Monday, the 1st, the professional development day. We contact DESE to see if we could go remote for all of 5th grade through Wednesday, the 3rd. We moved the classroom desk to rows and 3 feet apart. The lunch rooms were moved to 6 feet apart. And the plan was to review protocols with staff and students. We contacted DESE to request the remote learning for all 5th grade students through 11-3. On the 1st, we pool screened all 5th grade students. All but 28 of the eligible students participated. From this, we had 2 positive that were in classroom F, which is a classroom that did not have any cases as of yet. So neither of them were close contacts to anybody. One was asymptomatic, and the other one, the symptoms started on 11-2 when we got the positive test results. So there was no in-school contact tracing needed for these 2 students because they had not been in school since the 29th. The medical advisory team once again reviewed all the data, and the plan was to, they proposed that we go remote for everybody through the 5th, return to in-person learning on the 8th today, which would have been day 10 after anybody's last potential in-school exposure. Pooled screening again for the 5th grade on Thursday, which our typical screening day is Wednesday, which this falls into your typical, if you were quarantining and doing testing, they test on or after day 5. So this would have been day 6 after their last potential in-school exposure. And we continue to recommend test and stay for all close contacts. We petitioned DESE again to keep the 5th grade remote until 11-8, and they allowed us to do that. Oh, sorry. On Tuesday, we did get the 9th case in classroom B. They did have additional exposure outside of school. Sorry, and no in-school contact tracing was required for that. And then Wednesday, there were no new 5th grade cases, 1 4th grade case, which was a household contact. Thursday, we had no new cases. We did the pooled screening again. We had no positives, which was a miracle. On Friday, we had a 3rd case in classroom C, which was a close contact. And no in-school contact tracing was required because they hadn't been in school all week. On Saturday and Sunday, we had no new cases. And today we had students in 5th grade who came to test and stay, although they were not required. They did come before going to school. There was a handful, and one of those students tested positive this morning at test and stay, which was day 11 after their last exposure at school. So there was no in-school contact tracing required. So to summarize that, we've had 23 fifth grade cases in the past 2 weeks. Classroom A had 6, classroom B had 10, classroom C had 3, D had 1, E had 1, and F had 2. In-school transmission, possible in-school transmissions, we had 11. Remember, possible in-school transmission means that they were identified as a close contact, but there was also possible outside exposure, outside of school exposure. Probable in-school transmission means that they were identified as a close contact and they had no known exposures outside of school. So where were the close contacts identified during all of this? They were identified at lunch, in the classroom, at indoor recess, and at SAC. So going forward, the medical advisory team in their discussion has decided that if there's more than one close contact that tests positive with test and stay on day 1 of test and stay, then we would consider the whole class would be close contacts and tested. The reason for that being if you find out about a case and that on that day 1, someone's testing positive, there's probably more transmission that's happening in the class. And we did do that with both of the cases, both of the classrooms where there were the clusters. If the entire class is in test and stay, the students will be spaced 6 feet apart for the entire day. We'll strictly enforce masking all day except when eating, and we'll limit the group work. We'll review mitigation protocols with staff and students and continue to message about staying home if symptomatic. So throughout all of this, you would see in my notation that a lot of the students were symptomatic. So a lot of the students were symptomatic and at school. And we just really need to send home that message that it's really important, even with mild symptoms, to stay home. The majority of our students sorry about that. The majority of our students, their main symptom was a headache. And lately, the past few people that I've spoken to said their eyes hurt. That was their first symptoms, that their eyes were stinging and burning and hurt. So, but headache was the #1 symptom for the majority of people. So I think that just knowing that it can be mild symptoms and to just be aware of all the symptoms, we have lots of testing that's available around, and not to hesitate to get tested if you're symptomatic. So I know there's probably a lot of questions, so we can stop there and we can ask questions, and hopefully I'll be able to answer them.
Oh, Kamali, I see your hand up at the top.
Thanks, Mary Ellen. When have your nurses or yourself received phone calls or emails from parents where they say that their student kind of looks just a little bit off, right? And where can I get a rapid PCR? Are you getting those kind of calls, or people are just at this point know where to go, figure it out on their own, have at-home testing?
Well, there's lots of people have
There was in one of the things that you were running down, you mentioned that there was like the person had symptoms and then the next day they did a rapid PCR, it was positive, and so that's how they knew.
So there's rapid PCRs, or there are some doctors' offices do them. Hopkinton Urgent Care does them, but and they're accepted. Any kind of nucleic test is accepted as a positive. So I think nurses get all kinds of questions. I think the testing site information is available on the website, on the district website. It's on all the protocols, then guidelines for parents. It's on the testing information site. So the nurses have it. Today I added QR codes to all the tests. So when we hand it out to people, the nurses have it in their office to hand out. When students go home, people can just scan the QR code to find a testing site. We have Ashland Commuter Rail Station, which was recently opened a few weeks ago as a testing site, and they're open in the evenings, which is night. They open at 7 on some days, and they're open until 7 on other days. So I think we have
Mary Ellen, could I just add also the rapid antigen tests now are readily available at local pharmacies. So if parents, parents want to purchase a couple rapid antigens tests just to have on hand for those mornings where, your son or daughter may wake up and not be feeling well. That's a real useful tool because that will kind of gauge a quick test, a quick assessment and give real-time data.
So the kind of rapid antigen tests we use are Binax now. And I know that they're available.
Thank you for that. And for anyone that's listening, now they have that information. And then the second question I have is around the contact tracing that you went over in the beginning of the discussion. Could you state, is our contact tracing unique or is it very standard compared to our peers in the Metro West, let's just say?
I can't compare to what other people are doing, but I think that contact tracing there from public health, there's contact tracing that needs to be done. I know, there's a whole interview they go through when they're filling out their form online in the database, but I think every school nurse across the district is doing contact tracing like we are.
Okay. On the last part of the contact tracing, you mentioned what the steps are for vaccinated students or what we would be doing for vaccinated students. Could you just clarify that's not after that's fully vaccinated?
So yeah, so if there's different criteria for a fully vaccinated or an unvaccinated close contact. So fully vaccinated is 2 weeks after your second dose of Moderna or Pfizer, or 2 weeks after if you're getting 1 dose of the Johnson & Johnson. So yeah, so it's fully vaccinated, not just partially vaccinated.
Thank you.
Jennifer?
I have several questions. So my daughter, I'll just start off by saying, was one of the 23 who was the positive, one of the positive cases. So I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about this whole situation. But I guess I have a few questions about, in terms of how you think this, and there was one slide where you talked about where you think the spread was. Do you think it's most likely in terms of the medical advisory committee that this occurred at lunchtime as the primary spread, or it could have been, or it's impossible to tell?
I think when we do the contact tracing, at lunch when we were 3 feet apart, there are 8 people typically. Unless you're on an edge, that were considered close contacts. So a lot of those people are in the classroom too. Some people were not identified as close contacts. So on our tracking sheet, we note whether it was multiple places, like whether it was art class or library or the classroom or lunch. So there were a number of close contacts at lunch.
Okay. And then I had
Mary Ellen, could I just add to that? So I think snack and lunch were the 2 areas where we really, I think, identified where we think most of the concern was. And secondly, I just want to kind of acknowledge too that masking is an important mitigation layer in really making sure masking was done with fidelity. In terms of kids wearing masks and teachers wearing masks. That was something that we identified as an area for improvement.
Yeah, I think that typically snack it's tried to have outside when the weather is nice. This was kind of a perfect storm. We had 3 rainy days. So that meant there was indoor recess also. So another opportunity for the students to be closer together and, interact with each other closer than typical.
Thank you. And then another question, I know you said that that you do not do contact tracing on buses, and I know that DESE did not require that anymore, but I'm wondering if that's something that we want to think about doing, or if there's a way to do that, especially since I've heard from a lot of parents that they're saying that some of the older kids are taking their masks off in the buses. Some of the buses have their windows closed. Some buses are sitting at schools for 20, 30 minutes. and again, I don't know if there's any indication potentially that this was a bus issue. I know there was a survey that went around and, asked about busing too.
There is, so the nurses have a tracking sheet where we track everything from, students that call in sick, following up on their test results. So it's everything. And as part of that tracking sheet, for our positive cases, we have a tracking of what bus they take, how they got to school, were they parent pickup or whatever. But we have that on our thing. And we did see in Northborough, just to let you know, that there was cases, a lot of cases on one bus. So what we did with that, we talked to the students and their parents and asked them like who they sat with on the bus, what were they noticing on the bus. And the kids it wasn't kids that were sitting together, which is kind of what I expected when I saw it, but they were neighborhood kids. There were neighborhood kids that played together. When you're thinking about the same bus, it's typically kids in the same neighborhood. So we did do that. We had the principals do spot checks on the buses to make sure the windows were open and the students were masked when they were getting off. We do have students that arrive to school and walk in the office asking for a mask that have ridden the bus. So I'm not sure where their mask was the whole time they were on the bus. The bus drivers do have masks that we have provided for them to so that they have them to give to the students as they get on. I think it's just those constant reminders that we all need to be really diligent about it. I did hear that students were eating on the bus, but I think we just have to go over that whole bus safety, along with COVID safety altogether, and just keep re-messaging that.
Mary Ellen, can you just speak to, you did look at the data of the students who tested positive to see if there was a pattern of, did they ride the same buses? Were they sitting near each other, next to each other? Can you just share what you discovered or didn't discover?
I didn't discover, there are, like I said, there's some neighborhood students that play together in the neighborhood that also ride the same bus, but it really was all over. Like there was a lot of different buses. There was maybe 2 people on one bus. I think one bus might have had 3, but other than that, it was spread out over multiple different buses.
Thank you. And then my final question, sorry, I had quite a few.
That's okay.
And I'm not sure if this is a question for you or for Greg or someone else, but I'm, given the fact that this, we're heading into the winter, hopefully with vaccinations, we're going to see things drop. But given the fact that there's a likelihood that kids are going to be identified as positive or as close contacts over the winter months, what plan is in place for I'm wondering what has been done in terms of the remote learning element. And just speaking for myself, those first few days where my daughter was home, it was very minimal. It was similar to the spring of whenever we went, I think, before we went hybrid. And then it changed, obviously, because her whole class shut down and then they ended up having a lot of content. So I'm wondering, is there a plan in place for what to do with students who are out? And is that going to be increased? Is there professional development days dedicated to help teachers be able to plan these kind of things, or what's happening around that?
I think
DESE doesn't acknowledge remote learning this year. Our teachers are really centered and focused on the students in front of them. I think, and then when we do have students who are or classes where we need to go to remote, our teachers are ready to shift to remote very quickly. We have talked about having potentially one person is responsible for kind of assisting with students at home to make sure that they're on track and so forth. But this year is very different from last year in terms of our ability to go and support learners who are home. I will share that this case at Neary School was the first case that we've seen of this significance across the 20 months that we've been involved in the pandemic. We saw cases here and there across our 10 schools, but this was the first, I think, true outbreak, for lack of a better word, or cluster that we've experienced as a district. And I think, for now, we'll try to support our learners in front of us. I think it's very difficult to ask teachers to try to also support learners at home while they have a classroom full of students in front of them.
Yeah, I just wanted to end by just thanking everyone for the plans in place, because it sounds like now there's going to be potentially a quicker process for shutting things down as needed. So that's nice to hear. And some of the changes, I think, in the cafeteria and classrooms is good. I'm wondering too, just to end, can we do things better than what DESE is suggesting, right? So even if DESE doesn't have contact tracing on buses or anything for remote planning, can we have kids like Zoom in or conference in, or just thinking outside of the box and going beyond what DESE is requiring? I think that's it. Thank you.
Katura?
Thank you. I just want to start by thanking Mary Ellen for that detailed presentation. I know this is exhausting, and we've been subject to a few close contact notifications over here, so I had a little bit of an inside look into how this is all working, and it's a lot. I do have a few questions. One question I had was, was there probable in-school transmission in the other sort of groups of cases that we've seen so far in other grades, or only in 5th grade so far?
Only in 5th. Oh, in Southborough, only in 5th grade.
Okay, so the others were just possible.
Oh, I take that back. There was one at Finn School.
Okay. And I know there have been some adjustments made since then. Could you just clarify? So once somebody is fully vaccinated, and so this will now apply to any of the younger set who become fully vaccinated, what's their status as close contact? Like how does that vary from what's been happening up to this point since they haven't been vaccinated?
So you have to be fully vaccinated to have a different classification for a close contact. So a close contact who's vaccinated, the recommendation from the CDC is to monitor for symptoms, to get tested on day 5 to day 7. They just recently changed that. The recommendation prior to last week was to get tested between day 3 and day 5. But as you could see from all of the test and stay dates, the post exposure, day 5 to day 7 is much more reasonable. And then to wear a mask indoors until you have that negative, when you're indoors in a public space, until you have that negative test.
Okay.
So it will preclude them from any kind of quarantine or test and stay.
So they don't need to do the test and stay, but they would still need to wear a mask, obviously, as is happening. Okay.
So,
so that will be
test and stay is only for unvaccinated close contacts.
Okay, so that will become much simpler once we have more and more vaccinated kids.
Correct. Could I just add one thing, and that is, what we're seeing in our grade 7 through post-grad, through age 22, we're seeing a high rate of vaccination and a very low rate of COVID positive. So all of the cases that we're really have been focused and centered on have been, students who are 11 years old and younger. So we're hopeful that once we get our vaccination rates up at the elementary level, we'll see obviously a significant decline in case rates, because that's what we're seeing in grades 7 through 12.
Yeah, in grades 7 through 12, our vaccination rate's over 81% in every single one of those grades.
Okay, great. All right, that's very helpful. Thank you. And then I just wanted to clarify. So when it came up a little bit ago about the Binax test that you can do at home, the rapid test, I don't think that this is what was meant to be said. But if your child wakes up and has some symptoms, and you choose to do a rapid test at home and it shows negative, you still can't send them to school. Is that correct? Or can you?
Correct. So so the symptoms, I think common sense needs to rule, with all of COVID, when we come down to it, there are all these rules, all these guidelines that are set forth for us, for vaccinated, unvaccinated people, and some can have this symptom and not that symptom. I think you know your students. So there is, you know, what do I do if my child's sick? There's that whole flow chart on the website, on the school website that says, you know, like if they have a single symptom, say they had a runny nose, just a runny nose, a single symptom, or just a sore throat, you could do a Binax now, and if it was negative, you could send them to school. If they have multiple symptoms, you can't. You need to get them a PCR. But if they have that single symptom and they had a potential exposure, or they went to a sleepover, or they were at I don't know, do you know, it had some kind of other high risk activity, you want to keep them home and go get a PCR. You know, like you want to call your school nurse and ask them. They're going to give you the advice that you need to hear. They're going to say, okay, if you didn't have any, you didn't travel, you didn't have any other high risk, you didn't go to a wedding, or, you know, have a sleepover with the scouts, or whatever it might be. I think that you need to factor in anything else that's gone on recently to go along with those symptoms. So I think the best bet if you have symptoms is to call the nurse and ask them, and they'll give you the advice that you need to hear.
Okay, that's great. That makes sense. I just wanted to make sure that that was out there because I didn't want it to sound like we were implying that you could do a rapid test and feel fine about sending your kid to school.
No.
So that's what I understood to be the case. Great, thank you.
Symptoms always trump, even if you're vaccinated. If you're symptomatic, you should get tested.
Okay.
Kim.
Thanks, Mary Ellen. That was a lot. I have a couple of questions. As you went through the days and labeled the different kids that were testing positive, one of them said like it was a different grade than the 5th grade, and it said household contact, but they're on that list. Is it the household contact of another 5th grader, basically?
No, sorry, no, none of the 4th graders were household contacts of the 5th graders.
Okay.
And none of the trottier casers were contacts of the near 5th graders. So
did we follow up on those siblings? Like the close contacts?
So the 4th graders, is that what you mean?
Like the big group of 5th graders.
Yeah.
Do we follow up on their siblings in the different schools?
Yeah, they're all, if they're a household contact, they're all quarantined.
Right.
So
But do we know, I mean, by now,
do we know the
yeah.
spread that went on from our 5th graders? Do you mean to other family members?
Yeah, because by now we would assume that they would be positive if it was going to spread in the house.
Correct. We haven't seen much from the 5th grade. We have from the 6th grade to
Okay.
the household spread.
Okay. But we're looking.
There's been
basically.
some, but I don't have the exact numbers. I could get those for you for another time, but there's been more spread to siblings from the 6th grade cases.
Yeah, I don't think that specific number is as important as like we're looking at that. Like
But
that.
yeah, we do track it because those
Okay.
students are on our tracking sheet as close contacts for the household. So we have to follow up on their testing and when they can return to school.
Perfect. And the 2-day look back period, is that sort of from the CDC, or is that like our medical advisory team? Like, where is that coming from?
Oh, that's Department of Public Health CDC guidelines. So you're infectious from 2 days prior to your symptom onset or your positive test to 10 days after.
Okay.
That's why your isolation is 10 days long from your positive test, but you could be infectious 2 days before that.
Okay. And so do we think that that was the case for this cluster, that it was only those 2 days?
It's hard to tell. Do you know what
Yeah.
I mean? COVID is weird. Like you could have a household of 5 people, half of them vaccinated, half of them not. Well, it wouldn't be 5, it wouldn't be half and half. But say you have 2 vaccinated people and 3 unvaccinated, and 2 vaccinated people and 2 unvaccinated people test positive, and the one little unvaccinated person never converts to positive, and they're all together in the
Okay.
same house. So sometimes we'll never figure it out. Sometimes we can trace it back to an individual coming to school not feeling well. When we do know that, you know, I think that's a really important message that we've been saying all year long, to just please don't come to school when you're sick.
Okay. And then the last question is today's positive 11 days post-exposure? Like, does that change like how we're looking at this cluster?
I don't think it's going to change. What if we went to a epidemiologist and gave them this? They would probably say it potentially could be from that exposure, potentially could be from something else.
Okay, thank you.
Jennifer.
I had just have a quick follow-up question. For now that parents are getting their kids vaccinated, I know with the clinics, obviously you can track the kids that are vaccinated through there. Are parents supposed to notify the school if they get vaccinated outside of that, or how do we, I assume the school is tracking which children are vaccinated and which are not?
So the state has the MIIS, which is Immunization Information System. So when you register for your vaccine and you sign off on it, you agree. One of the questions is that you're agreeing to your information being put into the MIIS. Our electronic health record directly connects with that, so we get that information right away. It's just like if your pediatrician gives it, it goes into the MIIS and we get that. But if you want to send in a copy of the card, that's great too. So they'll put it in your medical file.
And so that goes automatically. Parents don't, you basically are required, the results will go immediately. Okay, thank you.
If they agree that, they say that only 1% of people don't want their information put into MIIS. So if they chose not to do that, then we would not get that information and they would need to send in a copy of the vaccination record.
Thank you.
Okay, doesn't look like there's any more hands. I have a couple of probably not any new thoughts, but some follow-ups on a couple of things. But first, Mary Ellen, thanks so much to you, your team, nurses, for all of this work. So regarding the rapid test, I guess I'm just going to kind of repeat that what I heard was the rapid test has value if it's positive, because it says don't have your child go to school, but it's not necessarily a free pass if it's negative. Parent really has to evaluate several other things. Is that fair?
That's true. So even if a person becomes symptomatic at school, like in the middle of the day, they develop symptoms and the nurse does a rapid test, no matter the results, it still needs to be confirmed by a PCR. They will send the student home to have that test confirmed by a PCR, both negative and positive. So
understood. Regarding buses and sort of contact tracing, I know that even though you identified that buses are not included, it certainly sounds like that there's been a lot of, I guess I'm going to say, tracking or checking, that your team's put in a lot of time, checking on bus situations and, however you could do that necessarily, not without kind of having that, I guess, really technically be a part of contact tracing, but it does sound like there was a lot of effort put into trying to track what was going on buses. And,
so yes, so we definitely do track it. I think last year I watched a lot of bus videos when we were trying to contact trace, even though we had assigned seatings, the kids didn't sit in their seats very much if you watch any of those videos. So I'm hoping if we just continue with that bus safety things and just, reminding students to wear their masks and sit in their seats and buckle up and do all that stuff, we'll hopefully not have any transmission on the buses.
Well, it does sound like there's a lot of work being done to track this. Greg, you mentioned that I think I'm close to quoting, DESE doesn't recognize remote learning. Now, does that statement, I think I know what it means as far as, so because we go through an approval process to basically send a class home, and I know DESE's been pretty responsive as far as providing that response pretty quickly. Is that primarily, so the students get credit for being, they get a class day credit remotely, even though does, even though DESI doesn't technically recognize it, if they give their approval. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I think we look at two different types of remote learning. So I think, Jen was speaking to, that student who has to quarantine at home. That's a one-off. So, that's what the challenge is in terms of getting that student what he or she needs while the student is out. The remote learning that we shifted to for the two fifth grade classrooms and then all the fifth grade classrooms does count as time on learning. So they're really two different problems. One, to try to make sure we have continuity of learning for the student who's out for a day or a couple of days. And then for those classrooms that are DESI approved to be out, those do count as time on learning hours for the year.
I understand. I appreciate you confirming that. Last one I have is, I guess it's to Mary Ellen, but it could be to anyone, although it looks like there's some more questions coming up here. But can you share, if there really are challenges here, can you share any challenges you may have in dealing with privacy issues? I know, with social media, there's, a lot of communications, passed around that identifying specific kids, et cetera. But from the standpoint of you trying to manage the importance of maintaining privacy, any challenges associated with that, or really not so much? It's not really an issue as far as your ability to do that, or just asking the question.
I don't think we have an issue with that. I mean, when we
Okay.
send out any notification, it doesn't have any students' names on it, to
Okay.
identify them. And when we do have a positive case that we need to trace, we try to do it by maintaining that student's privacy, like we'll look at seating charts and do all of that, where we don't have to really talk to anybody. We can just ask what went on in the classroom, or where's your seating chart, who was sitting on the rug, did they work in small groups, who was in the small groups. So I think that I don't think keeping people's information private has been an issue.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that. Kim, I see your hand, and thank you, Mary Ellen. Kim, I see your hand up.
Yep, I have a couple more questions, actually, just to sort of piggyback on what Roger was just talking about. I think there's been some discussion in the community about wanting to know like more specifics about where the positives are. And so I don't know if you could answer sort of that question that Roger just asked with that lens. Like, would it be possible to know? I mean, I think I personally think that this question is coming out because of the cluster, not necessarily like before. I think there's like a lot of, I mean, it's been chaotic for, 100+ families over the last 2 weeks, right? So I think for the parents that sort of want to make that decision, like, okay, is it safe for my kid to go, or do I want to send my kid in? That's the question. But, I think like, is there a privacy issue with that? Like saying we have 2 kids, and I mean, it's kind of what you just did though in this presentation, but it's after the fact, right? Like we have 2 kids in classroom F during this cluster. So that's the first question.
So I think that in an elementary classroom, like everybody got notified in those classrooms where there was the cluster, right? Everybody got
So
notified
I think,
that they were all close
you look at
contact.
the 5th grade, say you have 6 or 7 classrooms, and during the 2-week period of all of these, sort of like another one, where nobody really knew where the positives were. I think that's the question. Like, yeah, so I don't know if there's an easy answer. I'm just saying, I'm sort of just.
So I think that most of the positives were in 2 classes, and everybody in that class knew because everybody in that class was considered a close contact.
Right, but you don't know if you don't know what you don't know, right? So if you are in the 4th classroom, you don't know that almost all the positives are in the 2 classrooms. Does that make sense? Because the way we report,
I think Greg's emails had kind of said that they were all mostly in 2 classes. I think all of his emails said that most of the cases were in those 2 classes, but I think that I mean, we can work on communication, you know, like through this, but typically they know.
But I think I will just share that, you know, we learned, this is the first true cluster that we have experienced, where it was, as Mary Ellen kind of presented the cases, it wasn't like we had 23 cases on day 1 and we could respond. It was kind of this building of cases. We have learned a lot about how we respond and what we would do differently, and that's working with the medical advisory team. You know, some of that potentially is communication. We did change our communication strategy from what we did last year, in terms of letting everyone know every time we had a case. So, you know, we've had some conversations around that. I think the dashboard, I think, you know, you have to go to it to kind of keep that's updated daily. I think it's something we struggle with in terms of what's the best way to communicate this type of information.
And I think we can work to notify classrooms in the elementary school if there's a case, so that we can do that. You know, that's something we could work on if there is a case in a classroom.
I mean, you might consider reaching out to the 5th grade, right? Because you have like a really good like sample of folks that experienced it together, right? So maybe you can get some insight, you know, from them directly. My other question, thank you, Mary Ellen. My other question is actually on sort of this, like the days that kids can't go to school and we can't really provide for them right now. And I totally understand that, but I wonder what we do if it's special education related, like in the services that we're sort of, you know, mandated to offer.
Marie, do you want to take that? So
Go ahead.
You want me to-
So, so I think it's, similar if, someone doesn't receive services because the student is out, is out sick for whatever reason. When the student comes back, I think the special education teacher or the team makes up those services. Yeah.
Well,
It's really the same premise.
right now, though, I know that at NERI, we are providing remote services to students while they're out. They're secret services.
And so like if you have like a 6th grader who's out for 10 days, we just like catch up basically after, like if they were 10 days sick, kind of.
No, we're providing remote services where we can. That makes sense. So we are, and we would make up any services that were missed, we would make up, but I believe they're doing most of those remote services now.
All right. Okay, that's good to hear. Thank you.
Jennifer?
I just wanted to add onto what Kim was saying, because I've also had a lot of parents reach out to me. I was kind of in the middle of it because one by one, everyone around my daughter and all the people I knew were like, now so-and-so is positive. And now, and I think there were several times where questions came up like, should I send my child in to test and stay, or should I just pull them and quarantine them the whole, the 10 days? And so in the context of that, it was like, I would like to know, because we're seeing one, couple cases this day, and then the next day, a couple more cases, and then the next day, a couple more cases. And so I think the concern then was that we were getting some communication, but it wasn't like the daily thing. And yet parents were saying, you know what, if we're still seeing this every single day, I'm not going to want to send my child into test and stay. I want to keep them home. So that's some, just to add on to what Kim was saying, in terms of the communication, I did hear from several people that they would have liked to have a little bit more, especially just in the midst of an outbreak like that. We're still seeing cases pop up each day, that kind of thing, I think would have been helpful for folks that I heard from.
Hopefully we won't have to deal with this again. But that's a great idea to like Greg said, we walk that fine line between too much information and people don't look at what we send to not enough to finding that sweet spot where we're just doing exactly what people need. So
And I think that what happens in a close group like this too, is now you have all of these parents messaging each other. There's a lot of like anxiety and stress over what to do about this. So I think it's just better for the school to be able to, in a situation like this, I agree. Hopefully it doesn't happen again, but to provide some sense of relief, I think, to parents for them to be able to make those decisions.
But I think people did call if they were questioning, so because some people had one exposure and then their test and stay got extended because they had a second exposure or maybe even sometimes a third. So I think that's those people reached out to us and, we talked it through. So people can always call and ask and we'll help them make the best decision that's best for their kid and them.
All right. Well, thank you again. My goodness.
I just need to put a shout out to Keith and his team through all of this too, because they've been working almost as hard as the nurses this past week. So we can't forget all of them. They're been amazing.
And the principals.
And the principals.
And the principals.
Well, we're going to lead right in to Keith, because transportation update is next. So it's going to be a good follow-on. By the way, Greg, anything else to add before we have you turn it
Yeah,
over?
I think the last thing, I think it's a great reminder to, obviously the district and our, reviewing our protocols and procedures with our faculty and staff and our students, but also that community commitment that really, to stop the spread, takes everyone involved in the community, from the school to parents to students. And it's that community commitment that is essential to, make sure that we're limiting the spread of the virus, especially with, I think, with this particular strain. It's very contagious.
Kim, is your hand back up, or is it?
Yeah, is Mary Ellen leaving, or do you have more of your presentation?
I don't have any more presentation, but I'm not leaving.
Oh, I have two quick questions then. One is that we talked about the dashboard, updating the dashboard last time about testing, like the pool testing. And I know that they were giving you some grief about being able to pull the data out. And I wondered if you had been able to work it out with them.
So we're working on it. So we get baby steps. So this week I was able to, I can check individual results, which is key, like if people are symptomatic and they're using that as their PCR, or they're, quarantine and that's their day 5, like it was great this past week when I could do it for people that, because they were quarantined this 5th grade, because they were really quarantined at home, they could use that PCR as their, instead of doing test and stay, right? That could be their day 5 test. So that was helpful. So, and then we are working on getting each school. So hopefully I'll be able to pull that data this week.
And do you know roughly about how many we're doing in the big group?
The big picture, it's about between 18 and 1900 a week.
Okay. And then my last question is, on the dashboard, there's a line that says district. Is that central office, or who is that?
District employees would be employees that are at multiple schools, or central office. So it could be any of those, like people that are between different schools. We really couldn't put them at one school or central office. It's just because we're housed at NARI, we wouldn't be at NARI. So
right. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Greg? just moving to Keith.
Let our principals head off into the night and then enjoy the remainder of their evening.
Are there any objections? Seeing none. Thanks to all the principals. And I have a feeling that instead of just enjoying the evening, they're probably going to be doing some preparation for tomorrow. That's just a feeling I have, but all right.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night,
Thank you. Have a
everyone.
good night.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Now it's Keith.
Thank you, Greg, and thank you for the committee for the opportunity to update everyone. I know certainly buses have been on our mind in a variety of different ways. And certainly I want to provide as much detail as I can about where we are with the new Start at 10 initiative, and certainly support what Mary Ellen echoed earlier about just the importance of some of the bus safety measures. I was going to add earlier that we have been in contact routinely with NRT about making sure that windows are open. And although when you drive by, you might not see that they're open, we require that all of them are at least down the first notch, which actually is not visible from the outside. So we have done spot checks on that, like Mary Ellen mentioned, and we have been in constant contact with NRT about it. And we are providing them with masks as needed. So the district is providing NRT with those supplies. And another good part about our work with NRT this year is they have become much more efficient in their ability to get us video of the buses for a variety of different reasons, from the day-to-day operation stuff to, things if we are worried about any type of contact tracing situation. So I have to say NRT has been a good partner in this process, and I know they will continue to be. So I'd like to share a few things about the Start Time initiative and where we are in the implementation. Obviously, implementation is well underway, and we're really transitioning to the analysis process of this. So we are deep into reviewing our routes for efficiency. We are focused on about 1 or 2 buses per tier. They're not happy with their performance. Jean Pinto, our transportation assistant and registrar, has been deep looking into the data of those 2 routes, or 3 routes actually, to improve their overall performance. And actually, as late as this week, we actually moved 2 of our Trotter Algonquin buses to a little later, so we can capture more of those precious morning minutes. So that's something that will be ongoing, that we do, in the next couple of weeks, with a real focus on that area. The other thing that is worth noting since we last met is we launched our new bus tracking app, Where Is My Kid? And for a new app, we did anticipate glitches, but overall, I think the experience has been pretty good for our families that have chosen to participate. We've gotten some very good feedback, and that's expected with any type of new application, that there would be feedback that would come in. And so far, they've been extremely responsive to that. They have a dedicated email address to receive all types of feedback, as well as even password corrections that need to be done. And I've gotten parents have been very appreciative of how fast they've been able to get those responses and get back on board. The one thing I have requested is any type of usership data. So that's one of the questions I anticipated from the committee and from others, is how do we know how many parents are actually using it? So that's the type of thing I've been asking as part of our complete data collection efforts with the implementation. And that will certainly be ongoing and help us to guide that path and instruct parents on how best to use it. So like I mentioned, we are deep into that data analysis stage. I am happy to report that our buses are on time in the morning. They are getting to school on time. And as things have settled in, they've given students ample time to begin their day. I did mention a little earlier that we adjusted 2 of the Trotter Algonquin routes for this week to make them 10 minutes later. And we are reviewing all of our buses for that to see if we can gain some of those valuable minutes back. So we're not going to end there. That type of process is going to be ongoing. We do have a couple buses in the afternoon that we continue to be concerned about, and we actually are in the process of moving a few stops from one bus to another to hopefully make that bus that has been routinely late a little earlier, to get it within 15 to 20 minutes of the end of the day dismissal time, to reduce that amount of time that students are waiting after school. That really is the sweet spot. We want to make sure that all of our buses are arriving within that time. And I can say that as things have settled in, a vast majority of our buses are arriving within 10 minutes of dismissal, which has always been the goal. And now we're dealing with those outliers that fall kind of a little bit outside of what we would deem as acceptable. So as we kind of get deeper and deeper into the analysis phase, Jean is working hard to keep an eye on these routes. We continue to get requests, and I feel we've been responsive to those, especially as we get into the winter months. There's certain things that we can do to make adjustments and make it more helpful for parents and their experience. And so far, that has gone pretty well. So I would say we're in a good position. I look forward to doing another round of ridership data collection. We took a little hiatus from that for the last couple of weeks to give our principals and their teachers a break. They've been doing an amazing job of keeping track of everything like arrival time and ridership. But we decided to give them a little bit of a break to let things settle in, and we'll do another round of that collection shortly. And I hope to report on that at our December meeting. So that will certainly be upcoming and part of the ongoing implementation process. So I would gladly answer any questions you may have.
Kim?
And just a couple quick questions. Thanks, Keith.
Sure.
The two Trottier buses that were adjusted, were those the ones that were arriving like 7 o'clock or 7:05?
They were arriving at 7:05, 7:10, and now they're arriving closer to 7:20.
Perfect. And do we have an idea? I know we have an idea of like when they're showing up to the school and heading off with the kids. Are we still at about an hour for some of the longer routes, or have those shortened up too?
They have shortened up slightly. We are targeting those routes as being a little less than an hour from completion, and that's when they are picked up. So not necessarily when they have to start waiting. So there is time when the kids are waiting for, that 15 minutes after school, and that does add on to a 45-minute ride, which gets it closer to that hour. But we're getting close to reducing some of that in the next couple of weeks. So I hope the adjustments will be effective.
Okay, awesome. I was invited to talk to a Cub Scout group in town, and at the end I went around and asked like if they had any great ideas. And one of the kiddos, he was not, he wanted to talk about the buses, and he mentioned that essentially he was about probably 45 minutes after school, but he was so concerned about the kids that were still left on his bus and how long it might take them to get there. So I just wanted FYI, even the little they're thinking about
very
it.
sensitive to the time that we're at the bus and making every effort we possibly can to reduce it.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Keith.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Keith.
You're welcome, Roger.
I don't see any other hands. So I guess we'll move to legislative update.
Just a quick legislative update. That's House Bill 4189, which is the blue spotted salamander that we talked about earlier. So they've already given an update on the legislative update with Mr. Mucci's great work of this third grade team.
Okay. Kim, is your hand still up? No, I'm sorry. Okay, so we had the joint conference end of last week, and Kim was our representative. I was the JV team. As far as a recap is concerned, Greg, how would you like to?
I can do a little recap of all of the resolutions were approved by the voting delegates. And those were in our packets last time. So if anybody's curious, they can go back and look. And also anybody that registered for the event, but didn't get to go to all of the sessions they wanted to, those are still available on the conference app for like, should be until the end of this weekend, this upcoming weekend. And then after that, it will move to the MASC website. So there was a lot of good stuff, I thought. So it was my first time. So I don't know. I think that's it. And if anybody has any questions, let me know.
And I can say that Kim and I touched base a couple times, and I guess I'm going to just share. She was very excited about a couple of these sessions, and you know, pushed hard for me to actually watch some of them.
I was like,
and,
come on, Roger, let's go, homework.
So anyway, good job. All right, old business, the NERI Statement of Interest updates. Superintendent.
Sure. So just on October 25th and 26th, we had the MSBA senior study team. On the 25th, they met with a group of key stakeholders and had many questions, and we provided them some insight in thinking around the statement of interest that was submitted. On the 26th. The team visited NERI and had a tour. And we are waiting to hear back from MSBA whether we've made the next phase of the process. And we should know either by December 15th or March whether we're invited into the next phase of MSBA process. So it's right now a waiting game.
Okay. Next item is I don't see any questions on that. Next item is well, it's a placeholder unless there's actually something that you want to identify as far as the before after school extended day program feasibility. I know
Sure, I'm going to share my screen and just give a brief update. So in terms of the feasibility process that we had, Becky, Keith, and I did sit down in September and outlined what we needed to do in order to be prepared to make a recommendation to the school committee around whether or not the district should take on offering an extended day program. So just quickly go through this list. So we did research other districts. We did speak with Ashland, Milford, Framingham, Wellesley, and Shrewsbury. We did kind of reach out to the ECC about licensing, which we are exempt because we are a public school system. We've had several meetings with our legal just to talk about any legal ramifications. And then Becky did some research around any insurance requirements. The financial team under Becky's leadership has done a thorough financial analysis around what are the implications of running a before and after school program. They developed a financial plan. They've also sat down with SCDP to kind of talk through their financials to see some modeling. And also Becky and her team have examined accounting systems and vouchers. We've also done some work around programmatic design and developing a handbook. So Keith and his team have put that together. That is in a draft form currently. And we've had conversations with building principals as well as Marie Allen and the Student Support Services team to really think about how we can support a before and after school program in terms of all students. We've also begun kind of outlining what an advisory committee would look like in terms of the work of a before and after school program. And also lastly, food service. So really thinking about snacks and whether snacks would be eligible for reimbursement. The next phase is really launching a survey, which we will do this week to get community input. And then ongoing throughout this process is really connecting with principals and then taking all this information and synthesizing it and analyzing it and making a decision whether or not it's feasible for the district to bring into its operation the before and after school program. So that's where we are. We are on target to present to the school committee in December. And I feel like, again, everything is underway as it should be. And Becky and Keith, I'm not sure if there's anything you want to add to any of this information.
I think that was good, Greg. I wouldn't add anything more. Becky, how about you?
No, the same.
And that is the update for the before and after school extended program.
Greg, Roger, if I could ask a question.
Yep, I was just getting over there. Sure can.
Greg, in the survey, is there an open field where people can, write in? Okay.
Yes.
That's all. Thanks.
Kim?
I just have a quick question about who is Pam? Is she with the school district or?
Pam Roberts is our receptionist slash tech support slash she helps all of us. So she's very talented and is very competent. So we capitalize on her expertise.
Extraordinaire of all is the way I would phrase it, Kim, but well put.
Pam of all trades.
Okay. Well, that's actually better than one of the labels I've had, which is extraordinary of none. But Greg, I think we're then done with old business and we're going to move into the superintendent's report. So I'll turn it all over to you.
So in your packet is the enrollment report as of November 1st, 2021. And we had 1,148 students enrolled, and we are 28 students off from our NASDAQ projections. And we continue to monitor it on a monthly basis. And we do expect the updated NASDAQ report for the December meeting. So that will be in the packet for next month. Next in your packet is the monthly general fund expenditure report and grant review, which Becky will give an overview of each of those reports.
Thank you, Greg. So in your packet is the monthly general fund report as of October 31st. And as you can see, we had $768,241 or 3.53% remaining on the bottom line. In comparison, at this time last year, we had $668,972 or 3.15% remaining. So we're trending very close, actually a little bit better to where we were from the same time last year. My team and I continue to review the budget and try to anticipate any upcoming expenses. And at this time, I have no concerns with the FY22 budget and welcome any questions and a vote on the report.
Questions? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the Southborough Public School District FY 2022 budget, monthly general fund expenditure report as of October 31st, 2021 until audited. Do I hear a so moved?
So moved.
It was almost a tie. I think Katura got there,
I can almost hear my kids yelling jinx from the other room.
I'm sorry. But I was sort of watching you. Who was the close second?
Kamali.
Okay, Kamala, did you want to second that?
Yes, second.
All right, moved by Katura, seconded by Kamali. Any questions? This is a roll call vote. Kim?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Kamali?
Yes.
Katura?
Yes.
I vote yes, so that's unanimous. Okay, Becky?
Okay, thank you. So I will share my screen now. So I did want to present to the committee the various ESSER grants that we've received over the past 12 months. There have been 3 versions of ESSER that have been released, and they have come from various packages that have come out of Washington. The first ESSER 1 was released just about a year ago. And as you can see in Southborough, we did receive $34,986 in total. And we have fully expended those funds, and those were expended on student Chromebooks and also on iPads. The second version of ESSER, these funds were applied for and received this past July. They totaled $126,933. In the materials that I provided for you in your packet, you can see that funds are spread through 3 categories, and those are stipends, contractual services, and supplies and materials. You'll also see that I have included a column for those areas where we have already expended funds year to date. Some of the key areas for funding pertain to the work around the equity that we actually had spoken about earlier during the Trotter presentation, assessment tools, and then also tutoring services. We've also included additional funds for student and teacher devices. And then lastly, the ESSER 3, this is the most recent. And we had applied for this grant on October 4th, and we just did find out last Wednesday that we were awarded these funds. ESSER 3 in Southborough totaled $281,464. And if you remember, 20% of that, or $56,293, must be utilized to combat loss of instructional time and learning loss. So the tutoring program that we had initially identified in ESSER 2 will be continued using these funds. You'll also note that we've included funds for the development and implementation of an executive functioning curriculum. We are also researching the purchase and implementation of SEL and health curriculums. And finally, we have included funds to equip some of our classrooms with amplification systems. During our listening sessions, we did hear from families that their students sometimes have difficulties hearing teachers with their masks on. And these systems are also beneficial for students who are English language learners and students with disabilities. So as I said, this grant was just approved by DESE last Wednesday. We will publish our plans for how we will expend these funds more fully on the district website within the next 30 days as required by the grant. And are there any questions on the ESSER funds?
What was the total of ESSER number 2?
ESSER number 2 was $135,238. I misspoke and I said what was remaining on the grant earlier.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. This is great, actually, though. Thank you, Becky. It's great to see it all out in one place. The tutoring programs that from ESSER 2 and then continued into ESSER 3, have those started? Or
those are still in the development stage. I know Stephanie, Greg, and I are having many conversations on the tutoring program, and we're working with the principals and how those will be implemented throughout the district.
That's great news, though. So awesome coming on the horizon.
Katura, I apologize. I was trying to recognize you, but I was on mute. So,
Becky, can I just add
please.
that, can you just speak to the timeline for the use of these funds?
Oh, certainly. So ESSER 2, we do have until the end of FY23. We have until September 30th, 2023, technically, to expend ESSER 2 funds. And then ESSER 3 does go out one additional year from that. So that is September 30th of 2024. So we are planning to utilize those funds over time.
Okay, Katura.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this overview. Becky. This is very helpful. It's funny because I look at the ESSER one amount and I remember the $35,000 and it almost like feels nostalgic to look at that. I remember, the amount it came in and we're like, oh, great, this will be so helpful. So that one is all done. ESSER 2. So I guess my question is ESSER 3, is that the one, because there was a survey that went out for people to respond to about how they thought the district should expend certain funds, and that related to ESSER 3, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, and do these categories here, because I know that the grant had to be written, the grant was the grant written based on the feedback from the survey, or was the survey meant to just sort of illuminate what people's priorities were sort of after we had the grant already written and we have the money?
No, the survey data did help to inform our grant writing process. There were some key areas, obviously, we needed to make sure that we satisfied that 20% requirement. But there were some key areas actually that did come about through that survey. I'll point out the executive functioning, and then also the classroom amplifications are two great examples of that.
Yeah. Okay. And are those like I know we saw some demonstrations in the past, like the CAT, is it a CAT system? It's where there's a speaker on the table and sort of an intercom headset situation.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
The red CAT system.
Red CAT. Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. So we have a lot of the ESSER 2 left. I didn't realize that there was so much left of that, but I guess that's a good thing. So
we did just receive that in August. So that is still relatively new as well.
Okay. That explains that.
It was all coming very fast.
Yeah. Okay. And then go ahead.
I'll just add too that many of the requests from the survey were around positions, adding positions, and which is excellent. However, once this grant funding goes away, you create a budget gap that you have to fill with operational budget. So our strategy, although we agree that we could always use additional people and positions, our strategy is really to look at professional development, curriculum resources and materials that, again, we won't create this operational shortfall once this grant money is spent.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. One of the things that I was thinking about is I know that when we do the budget every year, we sort of start out with the process of asking the principals and others in the buildings to identify what their wish lists are. What if they could sort of do what they really wanted to do, what would they need to do that? And so is this going to be able to sort of fill any of those gaps? I guess I was just thinking that this is sort of an unusual situation where we have this available, and perhaps it would fit well to kind of fill some of those wishes and needs.
I guess maybe I'll jump in and just say that one thing is I worked on the grant with Greg and with Becky is that our strategic plan and our school improvement plans had been incredibly powerful tool in thinking about this grant funding, in addition to the feedback from the community, from school leaders. We have an ambitious strategic plan, and so that's helped, I think, in making decisions as well.
So does that mean that yes?
Well, yes, because yes, it does. I mean, I think I'm just saying that like the SEL and the executive function and the health curriculum and all of these things are like kind of, the types of things that come up, and you might be able to take them to the next level with your wish lists. And they all align to our strategic plan. So it's a yes and.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I'll add to Stephanie's thinking too. I think as we enter the FY23 budget season, we don't really know what that will look like in terms of what types of financial resources we'll have from the state, the community, and so forth. So the grant can be amended to look at what our needs are. So our thinking is this is our best thinking with what we know now. We're going to be implementing, the tutoring and some of those other pieces, but then plan on kind of reassessing come January, February, when we have a better picture of what the budget looks like, because we may need to adjust to adapt to the budget landscape that we see.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, because I know that some of the, when I hear about some of these things that are such wonderful programs that, we end up talking about in these meetings, sometimes they, the actual cost of them is a couple $1,000s, they're not, but they can be so impactful on the learning process. And so that's, when I see this, I just think maybe, we can do that, but obviously it's part of the bigger picture. So, all right, thank you. That's very helpful.
So I'm looking at the agenda item, and it talks about a vote on the grant review.
So I do have one other item to present.
Okay.
And let me share again. So this is really the first time that we have asked the committee to vote to accept the grants that we receive as a district, and it is a practice that we should be employing. So what I've done is I've put together a spreadsheet that just details all of the grants that we have received so far in fiscal year 22. You will notice that it does include information that about the district if we applied with Northborough and the region as well. It will list the total amount of the grant, but then it will also show the Southborough Public Schools allocation as well. As you can imagine, federal and state grants are an important source of funding for our operations. We're the recipient of both entitlement and competitive grants. Entitlement grants are non-competitive and are awarded automatically on the basis of a defined formula. We do need to prepare a budget for each of those entitlement grants based on the allocation that we received. And then competitive grants are awarded based on a merit-based application process. We have received 2 merit-based grants this year, and those are our summer school expansion and engagement grants, and then also our early literacy screening assessment and professional development grant, and those were written by Stephanie Reinhorn. And as you can see that the total amount that Southborough did receive was $979,446 in federal grants. And as I mentioned, we do apply for certain grants collectively with the region and or Northborough, and those grants would be our IDEA special education and early childhood grants, our Title 1, 2, 3, and 4. And at this point, I would recommend that the school committee vote to accept these grant funds as they play an important role in the overall budget for Southborough Public Schools.
So Becky, I have a question, and the reason I was kind of slow with my words as far as the potential vote, I'm trying to reconcile the actual number that's in the agenda, which is the $768,000 number. And I realize that that's just in an agenda versus the 900 and I've got my packet open, $79,000. So what is
So I do have a suggested motion that would just refer back to the document that's included in the packet.
So that would be the $979,446?
Yes.
I would, so I think I would like to include that number in the motion if you don't object.
Not at all.
And so if there's, I think I'll ask for a motion, and then if there's any discussion, we'll take it then. So I would entertain a motion to move that the school committee accept all fiscal year 22 grant funds noted in the enclosed chart, which total $979,446, and use such funds for their intended purpose. So I'll be looking for a so moved and a second.
So moved by Kim.
Thank you. Moved by Kim. Is there a second?
Second by Kamali.
Seconded by Kamali. So is there any discussion on this?
I guess Greg mentioned earlier that you know, it's a while between now and September 2024, and so if the intentions change, if the funds need to be allocated differently, then that can be done as such.
Yeah, I think that's fair, right, Greg?
Yeah, I think Becky and I were speaking around the ESSER grants, having a monthly report on the ESSER grants. The title and IDA grants are a little bit more prescriptive in terms of how we're spending the money. So we were thinking that monthly report on the ESSER grants, and then at the end of the year, a culminating grant report for the committee.
Yeah, and I think since the it's not on the screen anymore, but I think since the motion kind of identifies the chart as showing the intended purpose, then I presume, and I guess you know, we understand that if the intended purpose that's listed on the chart, which is what we moved, changes, that we would have a chance to weigh in again on what's changed. That makes sense. Other comments or questions? Okay, a lot of heads shaking no. Roll call vote. Kamali,
Yes.
Katura,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Kim,
Yes.
and I vote yes. This passes unanimously. And Becky, thank you very much for the presentation and the analysis.
And
Thank you.
Roger, can I just compliment?
Well, I probably want to jump in, and I think Stephanie gets a lot of kudos here too, all along, because of the effort she puts in on securing these, a number of these grants for us. So,
Yeah, Roger, I just want to thank Becky and her team, and Stephanie and Marie and her team. There's a lot of hands in terms of preparing and organizing these grants, and there's a short window of time, and it's a lot of work, and no shortage of paperwork as well.
Yeah, I suspect that's an understatement. All right, so still in your report.
Yes, so moving on is the, in your packet is the capital plan, the proposed capital plan for FY23 through FY29. The capital planning subcommittee committee did meet, and we talked about the plan. I think for next year, for FY23, our proposal is to move forward with a significant paving project at either Finn or Trotter, and we believe primarily Finn, and that will be funded out of facilities revolving account. And tonight I would request a vote of approving the capital plan that's in your packet.
All right, again, I'll get a motion on the floor, and then we will have any discussion or questions right after that. Now, I'm trying to determine if we want to have specific numbers in the motion. I guess I'll try this. I would entertain a motion to approve the Southborough Public Schools fiscal year 2023 through fiscal year 2029 proposed facilities capital plan as printed in your packets. Is there a
Moved by Kamali.
Kamali moved? Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Katura. Is there any discussion or questions on this? All right, this will be another roll call vote. Kim,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Katura,
Yes.
Kamali,
Yes.
I vote yes, so that is unanimous. Greg?
So next in your packet is the document that outlines the FY23 budget priorities. And again, if it's the will of the committee, a vote to approve would be appreciated.
Yeah, am I wrong? Has this been out there for 2 months?
Yeah.
Okay, I had this, I was thinking we might have been going to approve this last month, but I guess we didn't. All right, same drill. I'll entertain a motion and then we'll have any questions or discussions after the motion's on the floor. So I'd entertain a motion that the Southborough School Committee approve the fiscal year 2023 school committee budget priorities as printed in your packet. Is there a so moved?
So moved.
So moved by Katura,
Second by Kamali.
seconded by Kamali. Is there any further discussion on this? I know we discussed it back a couple months ago, but haven't heard anybody send in any proposed changes, so.
Can I ask, better late than never? Let's see, the last bullet and the fourth bullet, are they basically the same thing? I mean, they're not the exact same thing, but should we put them together? Or
So the
we
fourth
can
bullet,
approve them?
Fourth
So the-
bullet is, yeah, I don't,
Oh, sorry, from the bottom. Recruit, so the bottom bullet and the fourth from the bottom.
oh,
yeah, they are redundant.
So
you want to
I
propose?
think it's,
you-
can
okay,
select
go ahead, propose your change. I have an idea, but go ahead.
so I guess I would propose that we make it one, however we do that is fine, basically. Or do we need to actually like have the words?
Well, let's discuss something. How do people feel about striking the way Kim described it, fourth to the last bullet, which is the kind of the summary statement, place high priority in recruiting, maintaining, and supporting high quality staff, and leave the last bullet, which is more detailed. I don't think we could strike the last one. Do people have a thought on that? Do they object to that idea, or do they have a different thought?
This is Kamali, no objection.
Yeah, I think that sounds fine.
Are you good with that, Jen?
Yes.
Kim? Your
Yeah, I'm
idea?
fine with that.
Okay, then I don't think we really need an amendment.
No, and I have one other comment, not a change, but the bullet that says prioritize social, emotional, and physical well-being of students and staff. Like how are we doing, like, is the staff part, is that happening now? Like, is that somewhere in that we can like roll into next year, or when can we have that discussion? Because I feel like we're not really having that discussion, right? And it's like, it's been so hard.
Yeah, I mean, I think that principals do prioritize their staff and try to balance the work and the demands of being an educator. Are there formal programs? No. It's kind of the day in and day out of how we support and listen to our staff.
Greg, I would just add that at our November 1st PD, one of the things you heard from the principals was about not just at our November 1st PD, but across the schools, you've heard them talk about the whole component of their school improvement plan about the CASEL frameworks. And as Jennifer Lipton O'Connor has been working with the principals in the schools, as Greg said, it is a constant conversation about how do we, like, as we talk about social emotional learning and social emotional well-being, that we talk about the faculty as well as the students. And that conversation is absolutely happening. And so as we're doing that professional development, we are talking about reflecting on, whether it's self-awareness and self-regulation and these same skills that we're talking about for students, we're also talking about it for the adults. So it is a conversation that is happening as we do this work.
Perfect. Great. Okay, back to you, Roger, with the amendment. Just how do we need to do it?
Well, So it looks like you pointed out that a couple of us didn't read that as closely as we should have. So
Well,
thank you for doing
I
that, Tammy.
didn't read it until now, apparently.
All right, so maybe last but not least is good. Thank you. So I'm going to presume that this will be, I'm not sure where this is memorialized, but I'm going to presume that when it's reprinted, it won't have that, as Kim described, fourth to the last bullet. Fair enough?
Yeah.
Okay. Back to you, Greg.
Sure. So
Oh,
did
We
we?
need to do a vote, right?
Yes.
I don't think we voted.
Huh. Fair enough. So let's see.
Roll call.
Well, yeah, just do the roll call vote. Okay, Kim,
Yes.
Kamali,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
Katura,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Now
Right.
back.
Next in your packet is the proposed budget calendar, and I'll just highlight that the town manager, the select board chair, the school committee chair, the finance director of the town and the school, Becky, and I will be meeting, I think every other week to kind of, as we go through the budget process, to discuss the budgets and how we can cooperate and work together. That is not yet noted on the budget calendar. All right, next.
Greg, is this the maybe the point where you might just briefly mention that you know, schools, including myself and you, we meet with a number of other committee members in town. I think it's going to be monthly, right? A meeting that the treasurers put together to really talk about the budget progress and process as we're moving through this budget year.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Sorry.
Roger, I will add those meetings now that we have dates set to the calendar. So we capture those meetings.
Great, thank you.
Next in your packet is the personnel report as of November 8th. So hiring has quieted down. So any questions on the personnel report? And then I think I just took Roger's job and went down the agenda. So the last on the superintendent's report was just the FY23 preliminary budget discussion. So just briefly, the budgets from principals and directors were due to the finance team on October 29th. So the finance team now is synthesizing all of the numbers and coming up with a preliminary budget. In the operational budget subcommittee meeting is scheduled for November 16th at 5 p.m. and we'll present the preliminary budget at that meeting. So we are on target and on time with our budget process at this point.
Okay.
That concludes the superintendent's report.
By the way, regarding my job, if you like it, but just don't ask to trade, okay? Because I'm not interested in a trade. So policy development and our distribution there is none. Well, let's see, educational policy first. None at this time, as I understand it. Policy development and or distribution, none at this time. There are at least some policies moving forward in the combined school committees, and I guess those will be discussed at the December meeting. The communications letter from Desi regarding the fiscal year 21 circuit breaker audit.
So each year, being 3 districts, each year Marie has the fortunate pleasure of being audited from at least one of the districts. And this year, it's Southborough's turn. So Maria and her team are well prepared and know this process well. So it's just one more task Marie can look forward to this year.
Yeah, that letter is in everyone's packet. Are there any questions on that at this time? Well, good luck. I think we would like to approve the minutes for the open meeting of October 13, 2021. And am I recalling? No, I'm not recalling that we had changes to that. So are there any questions on those minutes? In the packet?
No questions, no changes.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion that the Southborough School Committee, that we approve the minutes for the Southborough School Committee open meeting, which was a virtual meeting on Wednesday, October 13th, 2021, occurred at 6:30 p.m. Do I hear a so moved?
So moved by Kim. Oops.
So moved by Kim, seconded by
Kamali, I'll second
Molly.
it.
All right, any discussion? Heard none, roll call vote. Kim,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Katura. You're muted.
Sorry, yes.
Okay, Kamali,
Yes.
I vote yes, so that carries unanimously. And I think that we're down to agenda items for next month. I see in the packet, there's we got NESDEC enrollment projections, preliminary budget presentation. Anything else anyone wants to suggest now? Obviously, you have time to do that if we don't wait too late in the cycle.
So Stephanie will be sharing an MCAS presentation and update.
Oh, great. Anything else? All right.
Oh, I have a, can I add one?
Sure.
If we continue to have COVID issues, like more than we had, basically, can you bring the medical advisory or a representative from the medical advisory team? Because I kind of thought from the agenda, we might hear from somebody tonight, but so I hope we didn't skip them, but
Well, you've also set the bar pretty high by saying more than we've had. So I think we're all,
yes,
I think we're all hoping
more than we had before.
We don't come near what we just had.
No more clusters.
Greg, you'll take that one as far as Mary Ellen, if you feel it makes some sense based on whatever we see in the next month.
And Andrea was on for a little bit, but I believe she had to jump off. So
Yeah, I looked down the list a couple times, and I sorry I didn't. There were just a lot of people on the list, so I didn't see. However, the list has shrunk significantly. But we are. Anybody else have an idea for an agenda item next month before we move past that? All right. So we'll go into audience sharing. I think most people saw that I did message back to Kathy Lee. We would respond to that question by email somehow. Anybody have audience sharing? I'm looking down the list. I see no hands. All right. Thank you very, very much. There was a lot of material covered in this meeting, and I think it's actually surprising we were able to get it all accomplished even in this amount of time, and it took quite a time. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Kamali.
Seconded by Katura. So there's no discussion. Roll call vote. Kim,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
Katura,
Yes.
Kamali.
Yes.
I vote yes, and the time is 9:40 p.m. And thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.